Hello, everybody. It's episode 116 of the Holdback Rack podcast, and Dave is mostly here, and Junior is here, and we're all here in spirit. So that's all that really counts. Thank you for coming. Thank you for noticing the new emojis that I worked on. I'll probably change them, and there's like a limit to the emojis. So like if we get more members, I can have more emojis. So if you want more emojis or you have special requests, let me know. Oh, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, hopefully they look readable. It's hard to tell when you're making them because it's only 48 pixels by 48 pixels. Thank you. Let's do sponsor shout outs before we get this party started. Ral, vetdna.com. For all of your testing needs, use code SHITHAPPENS for $5 off the crypto panel. And their pack 10 would be good for any of the other testing that they do. So vetdna.com. Thank you. Quick sponsor stuff. Shane Kelley still hasn't made a YouTube video. I've yelled at him many times, but he's been really busy with life and the 15 Minutes of Lame contest. He's been on multiple lives. He was on Large March on Instagram. So if you want to see what he's doing, check it out. Small Town Xotics. Bravo Zulu. Living her best life. Last time I checked. Veteran, woman-owned ball python breeder. Not too much going on. I'll have to check in with her and see if there's any updates. But she has been doing flash sales still. So if you want to het puzzle something or other, check her out. Stoneage ball pythons. He's in the 15 Minutes of Lame contest. I don't think he's going to win. He does have a beautiful beard, but it wasn't enough to pull out a win. But if everyone votes for him today, maybe he could win. The popular vote anyway. He's helping Cue Ball Vind in Puyallup, the Pac North show, and he has his own show on the 13th at the Portland Metro Expo, Portland Reptile Expo. Stoneage Ball Pythons. Powerhouse Pythons, Andrew, he's also doing Pac North January 27th and 28th. Our ball python, leopard gecko, rodent, gopher cocoa, Stimson's python breeder. We love Andrew. Gray Family Snakes. The triple head DG clutch is on Morph Market, and I've seen some of them have disappeared. So hopefully they've sold, and we love that. So if you want to get in on VPI, DG stuff, project animals, Gray Family Snakes on Morph Market. Crested BNS Reptilia, he's still doing his sale. He hasn't updated his Morph Market, though. So you have to message him. But if you mention Holdback Rack Podcast, you get 25% off through Christmas. So you could get yourself your own little Pitchuofis party going early this year. I got 2 Jani from him. They're super cute. And I love them. And maybe best Pitchuofis. I don't know. We'll have to fight about it in the comments. He's also vending the Baltimore Repticon on January 13th and 14th. Thank you, Chris at BNS Reptilia. Oh, thanks. Y'all are super jetting. Uh-oh. You're embarrassing me. All right, let's bring everybody out. There's Dave. There's Junior. We're all here.
Dave does have a JMG shirt. Dave wanted to do this thing. Dave's like, he goes, you should dress like me and I should dress like you. And I was like, Dave, I don't even know if you have a JMG shirt. And I don't think I have any clothing that is like reminiscent to what you wear when you go crazy. So I don't have any of those like multicolored or 1980s kind of setup, like clothing gear.
Well, I didn't do the best effort either. I didn't wear a stupid hat or a pair of sunglasses, so I guess we're just gonna make it work.
I'm just doing my average day. Like the U.S. Ark shirt looks like I'm doing this on purpose, but actually I got a lot of them. It's just what I grabbed because it's comfortable. It's nice.
Yeah, you look good, bud. You look good. Now you got the matching hat.
You don't have like shorts?
I do. Well, short. Well, these are shorts. Dave probably. What are you wearing, Dave? You got short pants.
Well, they're short, but they're my work shorts. They just happen to be short, but they're work pants. I'm pretty much business here, and I'm work down here right now. I got to get back to work.
I got you. I'm the same way. I'm doing the same thing.
All right, sweet. Well, we won't keep you distracted too long. I almost made like a stupid infographic of all the properties of an animal that could influence market position. And then I realized that was about 50, like the shape of the head, the degree of polymorphism, whatever. And so instead of making a stupid like spider web of properties, like as we go through them, I would just like try to remind people like, the fact that this is fat is good and it actually gives it market share or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so that's where we're going with that.
So you have like basically a chart of various species, and you have a degree of the genetics, like the mutations and the polymorphism of that species, and you're making a diagram of like the 50 top most popular, commonly kept species in captivity. Is that what it is?
Kind of, but you know how like every property of the animal begets its like market position. So like if it's a snake and it's patternless, it almost will never be super popular because you can't manipulate the pattern. So that's one like point to like move it to like commercialization. And then if it's a snake and it's too snake looking and not like fat and funny looking with a big head, it almost, negative point. Like it has to look unusual for like the normal people to like it. So all of these like properties move animals back and forth and they're like relative commercialization. So instead of making a giant chart, I'll just like, as we go through common ones, we'll be like, what properties make them good? What historical trends position them poorly or better relative to other species? Does that make sense?
Okay. Makes a lot of sense. I think about that stuff too. Dave?
Uh-oh. Is that him or me?
There you go.
Is it me or
All right,
him?
you're frozen, but we can hear you.
Who's failing right now, me or him?
You.
Oh, I'm the one that's freezing?
Mm-mm.
Is it better?
Oh, Dave's the one that's freezing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Dave, okay, I think we're past that, but if that happens again, I just won't do anything. Too, when we talk about this, I wanted to bring up, and you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can? Okay. Just like the relevance of why certain species were important when they first hit the market and then why they faded away. And like you said, certain things about the species where even though in the beginning when there was a couple morphs and made them popular, over time they became less popular because it was a less desirable species. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, with junior brings, we were talking about like, species relevance that might not be relevant to us, but the overseas market's so strong for them, it strengthens our market here and makes them more popular. So that's kind of stuff I really enjoy about this when we get into that.
Yeah, it's very multifactorial, and it's sometimes like you throw 20 factors into a pot and then poof, you're like, wow, surprising actually, or whatever. But I think that's why all of this is really interesting. And hopefully we have time to do like 15 or so species, but we might run out of time because they're all like, there's a lot of historical stuff. And then hopefully we maybe like get a little predictive if we are feeling frisky. If not, it's fine. It's hard.
Okay.
All right. The first one, the most critical one to me at this moment is leopard geckos because they've lost both podcasts. And I don't know who is on the hype train for leopard geckos. So I don't know if we want to go back in time a little bit, Junior, to like.
Yeah. I mean, leopard geckos, they have, they've been very popular in the reptile hobby for a very long time. Ever since I started from like a little kid, they were readily available. And even, as I started, that's when all the morphs were kind of like coming out and the prices on them were just starting to drop. Like they were still expensive, like temporal albinos when I entered were still like probably like, there was people like lowballing them at like $500, but back then for the late 90s or like really early 2000s, right around that time, that was actually a pretty good deal. And, bell albinos are just becoming more available. Blizzards just a couple of years before I really get going gung-ho, and leopard geckos were like thousands of dollars each. And so the market was, obviously money, with inflation, everything was a lot different then. But the prices did, come down pretty quickly because leopard geckos are just, so prolific. And, leopard geckos had this when I was breeding leopard geckos as like a kind of a main source of income and working on different projects, you would kind of experience these cycles of people overproducing them and then prices coming down. And it became a little predictable if there was a popular morph that was overproduced. And then all of a sudden the market was saturated with them, but it was actually the thing I noticed it with the most, or as far as I can remember for an example, would be super snows. Everybody's trying to make super snow leopard geckos because when that came out, the max snows, and then people seen a super form, everybody's like, I got to make that because this is such a unique, cool, looking mutation. And then when everybody had super snows, since everybody is going towards the same project, prices did, naturally, of course, drop a little quicker. And then when super snows got oversaturated, I had kind of seen it before. And so my dad and I was breeding leopard geckos with my dad, and we started kind of like not ramping up, but we made sure to still produce a lot of super snows over the next few years. Because then 2 or 3 years later, everybody was bitching that everybody wants super snows now, but it's because there was a little less available. So whenever something becomes a little too available, even if it's really cool, the market is going to crash if everybody's just trying to make the same exact thing, like banana ball pythons. That would be a really good example. But leopard geckos are so prolific, I would see it go in cycles where you'd see people overproduce, and then the wholesale prices would be very low due to mass producers that are mainly supplying pet stores, and then it seemed like they back off, and then there'd be there'd be some more good years, and it just keep going in this 4 or 5 year cycle. This current cycle is a little different because it was prompted by a lot of money coming into the overall just into the overall market, and the other thing is too is the lack of new projects or morphs that really is going to hurt stuff. So. And that's the thing we're seeing with right now with leopard geckos is prices like that.
Do you think Cypher is enough to get them a second win? Because it's already fallen enough that
Cypher, in my opinion, no way.
Okay.
You need something pretty drastic and a really new. Black Knight was a good one, even though it's a polygenic. That's probably one of the best polygenics in leopard geckos that's been released in the last decade. I doubt there's not going to be anything that rivals that, because I remember even it would have been 15 years ago, there was rumors of the Black Knight guy. They weren't calling them Black Knights, but there's one guy in Europe was showing off these very black leopard geckos they had. And that was during the time when you'd see, there's black pearls were probably the most talked about hypermelanistic line bred leopard gecko at the time. You had, my dad and I had our charcoal lineage, which was good for combos. It wasn't the darkest. And then he had black velvets, which that lady wasn't really able to, reproduce well or consistently. So,
do you think there's an interval of time, given how fecund and quickly breeding, age of maturity, leopard geckos are? Wouldn't they need a lot more morphs per unit time to keep up? Because
yes,
generation time is really important here. Because there's a sweet spot. I think a 3-year female maturation is actually the sweet spot in terms of how it helps the species stay relevant, but not such a late generation time that people can't even breed enough of it to keep up with trends or whatever. How many morphs do you think leopard geckos need a year? One every 2 or 3 years?
Yeah. Now, polygenic, see, Black Knights, they held on a lot better than I thought they would. Even now, I sold some smaller Black Knights for $500, and I mainly am focusing on hognose. I was I haven't posted some Black Knights in a while. These juveniles are nice size. I'll post some, and I sold 2 right away. And certain reptile shows I go to, they're still selling pretty well. So yeah, the one thing is I was talking to my one friend about I'm working on a leopard gecko project right now. Now it's taken me a lot longer than it used to because my main focus is hognose snakes. So some of these leopard gecko projects, the one I'm working on, is probably going to take me about 7 or 8 years. But if you're working on a polygenic or a combination of polygenics and you want to have it really impactful, sometimes you have to work on these projects for a really long time. And I was joking with my friend. I'm I'm going to work on this project for 8 years. And then when I have these new unique individuals and I start releasing them, they'll probably sell really well for about 3 years, and then everybody will have them, and then it's time for another, project. So I'm going to work on a project for 8 years to have 3, 4, maybe possibly top 4 years of good, sales with them. But that's kind of just a joke, I think, with the one I'm working on, because it's a multi-combo, and it's going to be fairly variable. It should do pretty well.
Okay.
One quick thing. So, Junior, how many actual true mutations that aren't poly do you have in leopard geckos? Because the majority of that stuff is all poly stuff.
Mostly poly. Some people argue like white and yellow. That's a poly, in my opinion. Some people say that's dominant, but there's strong evidence it's poly. These people that are making these really high expression, like beautiful white and yellows, they're all coming from white and yellow to white and yellow pairings. And if you do breed white and yellow, sometimes it can have like that dominant kind of behavior. That's the kind of thing with polygenics. A lot of people look at polygenics as like, well, how does polygenics work? And then you explain it to them, and they think that's kind of like roughly the generalized, functionality of the inheritance of a poly. But polys have this very large spectrum. You don't know if you're like look at these hypermelanistic leopard geckos. Black Knight is really strong and domineering. Well, it's not that domineering, but it's way better than all the other hypermelanistics. And it's like, meanwhile, these black pearls, people selectively line bred them, but they never achieved what Black Knight is. So that shows that whatever that guy started with, the wild type alleles that are functioning to produce more melanin is definitely different within the Black Knight lineage than these other Black Knight lineages. So poly genes are very, they're not created equal. They're highly variable. And you don't know how many pairs of alleles that are producing these characteristics that you're selectively line breeding. You don't know how many pairs of alleles are actually being affected unless you're going to do even if you did like a genome test and you were able to see which alleles are being affected the most, there is still going to be variability, and it's not going to accurately pinpoint them. I don't think there's any way. Like height in humans, well, that's more complex, but there's hundreds of pairs of alleles that contribute to that. And it's like, do they have an exact number? I was like, I don't think so. They might, though.
Do you think that crested geckos are replacing leopard geckos in some ways in the market in terms of like share? Because
as long as there's new morphs coming out, for sure. The thing is, I told Dave this about a year ago. My prediction on cresteds is already kind of happening. I was like, crested geckos are they're gonna have a very hard fall, and unless there's a new traits pop up. So the thing is, I think crested gecko morphs and like just pricing and stuff can actually stay fairly bolstered as long as there's new mutations coming out. If all of a sudden there's no new mutations, everybody's going to accumulate these really cool projects and these combinations, and these poly variants aren't going to really save anything as far as that. There's my dad. That's JMG Reptile Senior right there.
Classic.
Yeah. I think he's taking off. You going, Dad?
No, I got to take the car.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we can talk about it now. I mean, have you been on Fetal? I was talking to Dave about this a little bit.
I heard about it.
I sent it to you. You might not open it yet, but I sent it to you a couple days ago. That's fine. That's fine. No reason to do your research before a podcast. It's fine.
Well, usually I do. Well, the other thing is, too, sometimes if you're going and you're like all surprised by stuff, like I'm not like, I had like a very vague idea of what we were going to talk about, like reptile market and stuff. And so like, I don't want to have anything rehearsed, but it would be good to do some research. I'm trying to explain my way out of not looking at it. But anyway, you already told me about it, Dave. You said it's essentially a marketplace to sell animals. And I think there's other countries that can buy and,
Well, I mean,
right,
it's a marketplace.
From Korea back to us. So they bought all of our sables and all of our caps and all of what Xanthics, and they're selling it back to us cheaper than we're selling it to them with relatively easily import back. So I guess the question is like, obviously it was bolstered by the export to Korea and Japan, that market, but they're like streamlining selling it back, which will sort of even out both market prices, so there won't be like a price disparity. And so a lot of the crested guy people are mad. They're like, like, they thought they had shunted it off and it was like a separate, market transaction, but it's actually like, globalization has, brought us all together.
Sure. Yeah. The importation back, they started doing that with Black Knights. Stuff was getting shipped back fairly cheap even a few years ago. And it didn't really affect Black Knight prices too much. But yeah, I mean, I have direct contacts with some of these guys, and I talk about the market on a lot of stuff. I know one guy that sold a pair of caps last year. He buys stuff and helps, basically connect customers from overseas to local in like Shanghai, Beijing, and then there's of course Korean clientele like that as well. And he's like, last year it was roughly a year ago, but he was telling me this a couple months ago. He sold a pair of caps for $15,000, and he goes, well, guess how much I sold a pair of caps just a few months ago? And I was like, $2,000, and he goes, $500. And
Mhm.
so, these guys, the one thing is, like, they can feed a lot of reptiles for a fraction of the price that it costs us. Their feeders are actually a lot lower. And if somebody's importing enough, the importation fee really isn't going to dissuade somebody if the math works out. So, yeah. And they were buying the majority of these. So it makes sense that they're actually going to probably have some of the best lily white axanthic, or the most lily white axanthic, and then cat combos. I mean, they're the ones that were willing to spend 30, 40 grand on them. And so now that the price is crushed, they're finding them to, sell, wherever they're legally allowed to export to. And if there's a market there, but,
Mhm.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with it, but there's a lot of like internal like crested gecko drama where they're like mad at each other for not price protecting a specific project. It's not very fair market, I guess.
No, there really isn't any price protection available there, though, because there wasn't even anybody that was lowballing anybody. If you were selling a cap for $5 grand a year and a half ago, even if that may have been, like, say, lowballing that point, there was at no point where they're like, you know what, my next move is going to lower these to $200.
Right.
That doesn't even happen in the ball python market. It was really a product of the production, the mass production in Korea and China and Hong Kong and even Taiwan. But sometimes I get mixed like information because there was some they were bearded dragons, and some of the prices on the red monsters were insanely low. And I heard a rumor they came from Taiwan. So when I hear stuff from other people and it goes through all the other sources, then I'm like unsure. When I hear it straight from a guy that I know that he's lining up selling caps and like axanthic lily whites and hognose morphs and other stuff, and then even leachianus, essentially from exactly what I've talked to him about, essentially every lizard species has been significantly hit there. And you could already see it like pouring into here with leachianus. You can get some actually locales for $300 as babies. He says it's really hit lizards, geckos, basically the stuff that's staying up there in price. He says, of course, like turtles and tortoises over there, the ones that are very popular. But, I'm not going to get into that. But he says snakes are actually holding on. Snakes are actually doing very well still. Corns, bulls, hognose are still very well. The cooler breed market's still pretty strong. There is definitely going to be a little bit of a reset with it, as far as prices coming down. It reminds me a little bit of probably the late 2000s ball python kind of market crash where they called it a crash. But there's just not enough people to buy these thousands of dollar snakes, unless you have tens of millions of dollars coming in. And, it's a reptile market. These aren't like, this is a living animal. It's this more of like supposed to be kind of more of like a hobby. These aren't products. And so, people just have to be, mindful of, the production numbers and everything. And, the thing is when these prices do crash, it definitely flushes people out too. And then, the market comes down, people get out. And then if a new morph comes, then the prices go back up. I mean, the ball python market, some people, you can look at it two ways. You could look at it pessimistically, but optimistically. There's still a lot of cool morph combos, and there's still like a ton of money in ball pythons, and they're still like one of the most, popular species of snake. But there's morphs that are overproduced, definitely tougher to sell.
Dave, did you have a...
Yes. So two things. So you're talking about the crested gecko guys, saying maybe they should have protected their market a little better. I don't remember hearing about huge discounts on these animals when they were leaving the country. Like, I remember a lot of really big sales happening here, paying market price that we put up, and it was a very large market price. Another thing with that website, look, I went through it again last night, axanthics on there for under $600. I think I saw there was a couple lily whites for $91, so on and so forth. Then some a lot more. Now, here's the thing. I don't think someone's going to buy one animal from Korea and bring it in. I think is that price reflection? Is that wholesale on their end? Or is that them saying, this is my price and this is me wholesaling it to you?
Little Monsters is their importer. They're not that expensive. So you can buy one if you really wanted to. Spend $120. It's not much different than like DDI because they bring in 30 at one time and they just part it out to whoever they're going to send it to. So it's not that expensive.
Yeah, importation and exportation, they've kind of been streamlined now. Somebody's like, hey, I can make money off reselling these. And they're like, so if somebody's producing a bunch of, let's say, crested leachianus and leopard geckos, and there's an importer in the United States that can get like whatever they're cut, like 20%, 20, maybe 30%, they can resell them. It happens a little bit, like as I said, black knights. And black knights, even real black ones, are going for $250 each over in China. And I think Korea, they're pretty cheap. But that never really affected the leopard gecko market here because it did for a little bit. Some people would import a bunch, try to resell them, but they weren't really putting them up on morph market. And a lot of people with leopard geckos, it seems like they're wanting to buy from an individual breeder and they don't want something that's flipped. So I don't know. I feel like crested geckos might be. It's definitely going to be a little different. Especially because there was all these high-end morphs, and they're producing a lot of them. Black Knights, I feel like, weren't being mass-produced as much, and Black Knights are a little tougher to replicate, these real black ones.
Yeah, and with the morph thing, like you guys were talking, I mean, the reality is in crested geckos, wasn't it 20 years of all poly stuff, and then the last 6 to 10 years, it's been nonstop, holy fuck, we got morphs? It literally, it went from, like, nothing to everything in, like, one day.
That's very shocking. You're right.
Yeah, and I thought that was peculiar the way that worked out. So, when we talk about these market prices fluctuating, I mean, is it more there just wasn't enough buyers for enough of these high-end products like you're talking about? You're going to run out of money eventually, and there's only so many guys that can buy it at $10,000.
Mm-hmm. I think there isn't enough like volume of breeders yet. Like ball python, even though it's like whatever, too many people into it, they're boring. Whatever, I don't care. But like, there's an inertia there. It's like a ship of humans all doing the same thing together, so they can sort of buffer the falls and stuff a little bit, because there's every tier of breeder the whole way down, as many as you could possibly jam into a reptile show. So yes, they're not infinite buyers each level, but there are just more of them, so like the volume of humans is more.
No, for sure. And, again, watching crested geckos, at least over like the last 10 years, like, from what I could remember is, you had the Harlequin pinstripe was big. Everybody was obsessed with it. Those went for a reasonable amount of money, stayed consistent for a while. The really high Dalmatians, even though you don't see a ton of them, those did really well. And then there was that project with Pangea, which at that time seemed like a fuck ton. I think they were charging $1,200 for their triple X's and maybe $1,600 for their triple X project. Mm-hmm. You guys remember that one?
I don't remember the triple X. What was the triple X?
It was kind of like a tiger stripey kind of. I don't even know how to explain it. It had like the striping went from the back all the way down the sides, compared to having the pin break it up. And you had really vibrant oranges on it, nice brown or black background, but they were just a little more peculiar compared to what they had already seen. I think Bill bought a couple back in the day, and that brought it to my attention. That was around the time that he was selling his Harlequins for like $350, like on average. And I think he did pretty good for a while there. But, that was like, in my opinion, that shit was crazy. And I even remember like, was Xanthic's price point? Was it $5,000 or $2,000 before COVID? And like, people thought that was way too high. And then we saw them for $37,000 just from adding the Lily White 1 year later. So, like I said, that market's been kind of tough because, I don't know, there's been a lot of inconsistencies over the years. And this morph thing, I just don't think they were ready for it, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What? All right, let's go back real quick. We got distracted. But leopard geckos, do we have like a prediction? Do we think it'll like continue to like slowly edge along? Because a lot of people like lament the state of leopard geckos or whatever, because they aren't, the best, most desirous lizard species or something.
Well, they sell well when I go to shows. They still sell pretty well. They actually sell very well. I'm not selling like a ton of them, but I'm not selling barely any. They actually still sell well. They are a very easy species to keep. They're very handleable. There's a lot of morphs. So they're very still popular in the pet trade. They make very good pets. They're still the problem is they're overproduced. Overproduced for pet stores. As long as these mass producers are still around, there's always going to be like a surplus of these lower end ones.
Okay.
And so leopard geckos, there isn't really nothing new coming out, so there's nothing to really spike. Well, actually, forgot, there is one. Satin's actually pretty cool, and that's the guy. He told me you pronounced my name good enough. And I was like, I guess I'm not pronouncing his name right, but he's not going to correct me. His name's like Ilko Skolt.
Is it on Instagram?
Oh, he's on Facebook. He's really
is it a scaleless?
It's a micro scale. I wouldn't call it scaleless. I can see your reaction. It's not a scaleless that's going to have all kinds of problems. Like, here's the thing with scaleless corn snake. I posted a scaleless corn snake on Facebook once. I got one in a trade, and so the first comment this guy just puts trash.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. this is dumb because the thing is the corn snake's not completely scaleless for one. They still have scales, and so the most important parts of their body are being protected. Their belly scoots, they still have all those. They still have a lot of their facial scales. They're bit on the rostral. They have some of their frontal scales are all messed up. They're like not even normal looking. But then they have their upper and lower labial scales around their mouth. I had a few scaleless corns. They did perfectly fine. They shed fine. Now, here's the one thing about the scaleless corns. They definitely can't take as much neglect. I can already tell that. They're going to get dehydrated quicker because they don't have those protective extra scales. They're more prone to infections if you keep them dirty and really nasty. But if you take care of them and you're not neglecting your animal, which you're not supposed to be, I don't see they're going to have any problems. I know the scaleless ball pythons have problems with their face rubbings and stuff. But with these scaleless corns, the few I had, and from what I've seen with people, as long as you take good care of them, there's no problem with them. So when you have like or even any like mutation like that, I'm definitely not against them. Now, if it's a scaleless animal and it's having problems with like infections, face rubs, and it's causing anything like that, there's a negative. But until somebody shows me scaleless corns that are being taken care of while having issues, then I'm like, okay, that's a problem. But I don't see any evidence.
I don't begrudge the like missing scales part. It's like that they're just fucking ugly. Like they don't look like an animal.
Fine. That's okay.
They look like a piece of meat.
Yeah.
Look at that awesome thing. Look at that.
Is it awesome?
Looks like raw chicken. A gecko. Looks fucking sweet, and it's great.
I like that it's see-through. That part's cool, and it's more like a frog or whatever.
Okay, a frog. That's the selling point that doesn't look good. People love frogs.
Listen,
people love frogs.
I like dinosaurs because they have scales or feathers, not because they look like frogs. Okay.
I want a frog gecko. You'll go to school. If you're listening, please sell me some. I tried to ask him, like, hey man, can I buy some? And he's like, I don't know, dude. And that's it.
Oh, he doesn't know.
Nah, he's like, I was trying to convince him to sell them to me first. But I was being honest. I was like, here, man, I'm not going to try to manipulate you, but I would really like these. And I was like, I don't know what I have to do. I was like,
what would you do?
Well, nothing crazy. It's a leopard. It's got to get out of hand. It's not a new hognose more. This is a leopard. So I'll tell you, because basically when he's like, I don't know, he goes, yeah, I need a few more years. I was like, okay. I'm losing interest because the leopard geckos they're a lot of maintenance. And, that's like, if there's any drama over here, it's over leopard geckos. They're like, Junior, these leopard geckos are really dirty. I'm like, well, when were we fully cleaning these last? Like 5 days ago. I was like, well, let's do it now. I was like, I got to get reduced on these things. They're, you can't have too many leopard geckos. That's where I'm at right now. So I've actually been reducing. So it's probably a good time to get into leopard geckos, actually.
Yeah, I like that its face is not malformed.
No, good structure. And all of his look perfect. We're not seeing any, problems with them. He says they grow a little slower, kind of like super snow, but nothing bad.
All right. I mean, kudos to the face not being malformed. Even corn snakes, I know they're fine, but since some of them don't have labial scales and some of them do, so if they don't have this sunken in like grandma look, I don't
like that.
I'm out.
That's kind of funny. I want one of those. Looks like a sock puppet. Sounds like a sock puppet. All the things you don't like about these things are like the one looks like a frog. Big selling point. That's awesome. Everybody wants it. It looks like a sock puppet. Damn. If you said I gotta say it looks like a sock puppet, I'd be like, where?
Fuck it. Yeah, I'm good. Pass. Hard pass. A buddy was like, you want to get on with me like an import of microscale corn snakes, which are better looking because they have more scales. I'm like, actually no, because
really?
I do not give two shits about that aesthetic. I want a reptile, dinosaur, baby dragon only. No frog, no sock puppet. Good. Oh, okay. I understand that it's cute. Women like it. Fuck women. They're stupid. All of them.
Okay? I like it too.
You're a woman.
Well, maybe when it comes to corn snakes, I'm a little ladylike, but no, I like the Scales project.
I do not. Never. Even when I have to look at them to ID it for somebody, I'm like, ugh.
I only have a couple, but I love them. I haven't made one yet, though. Somehow I made my own hats. I bred it back, and I've yet to make a scaleless.
You yet to get scales? Oh, well, just keep. You'll get them.
Nah, no more pats in the back. I'm just gonna have to buy everything I want now.
All
right. So leopard geckos would be a good time to get in, maybe because it's on a downswing. But then
Down
shouldn't you
swing-
like time it out better because they would be breeding in a year anyway? Should you like wait a little bit?
No, because you gotta do your projects and stuff. I mean, there's still like I know white and yellow combos still sell really well. You know, they're very pretty. You know, things like blizzards. I'd look at stuff that's not being produced a lot, things that aren't that available, or just look like projects you want to get into. That just for the sake of like, hey, this looks fun. But if you're looking at morphs that there's like a bunch of them, I'd probably try not to produce a ton of those, of course. But that Satin, he will be releasing them fairly soon, and that's a good project. I think that's a good project. What you really need like another leopard gecko project coming out like relatively close to it, really help it. Because then there's just more excitement, there's more projects to work on, and that's one way to gauge like like you're talking like earlier about making that diagram, what's going to be popular, kind of like you said, like a patternless snake in the wild, something that's like unicolored, like you look at these like South African file snakes. I remember somebody saying that these were going to be really big, these things are going to be so popular, and I'm like, wow, yeah, some people they ain't going to be able to do much with selectively. You could selectively line breed them to maybe have more of that purplish, lighter colored or hypo-ish, but there's no pattern there really to change or anything like that. And they're very kind of like niche snake too, but yeah, basically if you see something that has a lot of variability, line breedability for making polymorphic appearances, and then especially new traits, like but then that's one thing I was going to talk to Dave about was ball pythons. Ball python, well, the one thing is the funny thing, we're talking about certain like species where there's not enough new projects, or there's all of a sudden there's no projects, so then everybody's like there's less stuff to work on, so then there's a decline and there's really nothing to spend a bunch of money on because everybody's already got everything and they're doing these projects. And ball pythons, they had it in the late 2000s. I feel like they actually had well, I wouldn't say feel like, because there's only so much money. It's not like you just keep generating money. It's like, oh, every time there's a new morph, there's more money. But ball pythons at one point, when everybody started catching on, there's all these dinkers and there's ways to find, a lot of these mutations in imports. In the late 2000s, there was this influx of too many morphs. Like every 6 months, somebody was having a new incomplete dominant trait that they found. And so then you had too many new traits. And that's how things got overlooked, like chocolate. Like chocolate and super chocolates are awesome right now. People are doing all kinds of crazy stuff with the combos. And I remember seeing them when I was like 22 years old, a super chocolate ghost. So there was already a recessive super form all the way back then. I was like, man, this thing is hot looking. And, there was just so much new stuff. People just didn't care because there's like, well, there's this, and that. And there's just too much. So you can have too much, and then you can also have like too little, which is like nothing. But you don't need like, I think like with a lot of stuff, if it's like every 4 or 5 years, but like you're saying on how fast the animal reproduces, like leopard geckos and crested, you need something to pop up almost a little more because of the reproducibility. But Dave, you remembered that. What do you think about there's like at one point just being too many new morphs coming out in ball pythons?
Well, it gave you a lot of different ways to manage your business because, you could jump on a mutation, work it hard for 2 years, and then jump onto another mutation if you could afford it. So, there are a lot of people that kind of went through codoms like they were crazy. I mean, I still think there's probably 150 morphs and ball pythons we're not even really doing anything with. So, and we're going to keep bringing the old ones back when we figure out there's something worth doing. I think some of these lower expression ones that kind of got overlooked, simply I always bring up special. Special was meant to make crystals. Now special is a cleaner gene and enhancer gene they're putting into clowns, and they're making a better looking clown. They're making a better looking everything except for a pie because you lose all the pattern. No, I think I'm kind of getting off on this. Just I don't think there's a problem with all the mutations there are, but I definitely think our attention span couldn't handle it. And I think now we're actually settling in and going back and doing what we should have done 20 years ago. So I like everything we have because I'm still convinced the day's going to come. We're not going to have anything new anymore. We're going to have to just play with what we got.
Well, eventually Africa will close one day. And then we'll be working internally and we'll maybe still have some mutation rate, but it would be slower, hypothetically. But then we wouldn't be competing with African imports. But the question is like, how much does that hurt the larger or help it to not compete with either imported animals or, just like bulk breeder like for leopard geckos that are just like reptiles by macking the entire universe with leopard geckos. Like if they stopped existing, would that actually be better for leopard geckos or worse for leopard geckos?
Better.
Better.
But at the same time, though, that takes them out of the pet trade and out of pet stores. You know, if we do stop bringing in ball pythons, more than likely Petco and PetSmart won't do it anymore because they want to contract with one person. They don't want to contract with 50 people.
Mhm.
They can't take care of their quarantine. They can't do anything that way. So in my opinion, we kind of need those big guys to expose people to them in the bigger pet stores because no one else is going to do that if they're not doing it.
Yeah, I agree with that too, but somebody could mainstream this stuff. Like, you know, there's gonna be some, they could find something to fill that niche. Like, some of these people that do supply pet stores, sometimes they do run low and they go to smaller breeders, and then they find breeders that are mid-size and they can, you know, sell the stuff. But yeah, you have a point because they want to work with these contracts, and then they want to get the animals in for a low price. But
well,
you know,
there's a punishment though with this. Like, if let's just say Petco's buying 20,000 leopard geckos from you, and that's your contract. If you don't give them the numbers, you owe them money at the end of the year, and that's how a lot of these contracts with those companies work. And that's why they
selling leopard geckos for like $8 each, and then you have to somehow pay them too. That doesn't even make any sense. Who would even take that on? That's like I don't know. It's like selling your soul basically. You're gonna get fucked.
It is, and that's why at the end of the year, sometimes like there are some breeders, I don't have to name names, but we'll get approached by some of these companies, and they'll sell them, let's say, 500 het-pied females for $35. They're literally selling them to the pet store for $20, but their fine that they have per animal would actually be more than $35. So it makes more sense at the end of the year if they can't hit their quota to go buy from other companies to supply Petco, PetSmart, just so they're not fucked.
That's some like Purdue shit, right? Like you control the vertical. Yeah, fuck that. I was hoping it was more like, you know, like one person had a contract for 1,000 leopard geckos, and he just found his buddies and he was like, okay, I just need 500 more, so I'll do it. I didn't know they were penalized.
You're penalized by the company if you don't fulfill your contract.
They probably do. They probably do. Like, but here's the thing. I kind of just said that before, that junk I just said. But it's like, you say you're missing a quota by leopard geckos by like 1,000. You don't think you can find 1,000 leopard geckos?
Oh, no, you can. You just might have to pay more than they're willing to pay you for.
Yeah, right. You just gave that example of the ball python. Yeah.
That's crazy. So maybe it's a wash. Like, you are competing with a bulk seller in some situations, but maybe more people are interacting with the species in the pet store, which leads them to find you anyway. I think some species are more abused in this way than others. Like leopard geckos seems to be the worst of that category, because like I don't know if there's like a good leopard gecko pipeline right now where somebody gets one at Petco and immediately is like, this is my favorite hobby. It's a little bit easier for them to jump on YouTube and get into the ball python pipeline and like learn about ball pythons, just for like a marketing standpoint within the hobby.
Yeah, I mean, there's more. It's funny. I don't know the metric on it, but like social media introduces so many people nowadays, and you know, I mean, I guess somebody going on social media, Instagram, Facebook, seeing a cute leopard gecko, they know they could go to like Petco to buy one. But if they can't get one from Petco, because let's say this is a scenario where Petco doesn't exist anymore, they'd have to look for and find a breeder to buy one from. You know, but yeah, you said like there's definitely a lot of entry people go to pet stores, and that's how they get started. I'd say that's happening less and less. If Petco just went away completely, or like Pet Supplies Plus and those chains for selling reptiles at least, I wonder how big of an impact it'd have on the market. I feel like it wouldn't be that large, and the mass importation of like ball pythons, like I feel like Petco and all of them don't really displace that, you know, because if they, and I see more and more, you know, more exotic shops too, or like, you know, pet stores that, you know, carry a bunch of different species where they have ball pythons and they're like all morphs now. And you can see that they're getting them from some of these bigger producers of these mutations, and there's less normals. I don't even know how to even sell 40,000 like imported ball pythons a year. I don't even know how you do it. Like,
I don't either.
I feel like, yeah, if you like put that task on like anybody and you're like, you got to sell these 40, I mean, I guess they're selling for dollars each, but you know, it's just, I guess, a lot of legwork. I don't know.
Well, and this might be too much information, but like from what I remember, the cost of ball pythons coming out of Africa before COVID, I think it was like $650 a piece out of Africa. I heard during COVID when the demand was high, they went as high as $21.50 and maybe as high as 27 out of Africa. And then I recently have heard that that number could have been as low as $250 to $5 a piece.
Currently,
So, well, and again, that I can't guarantee that, but I did hear that the cost coming out is a bit lower because the demand's so low right now.
sure.
All right. So as far as like inciting demand, which one do you think has more power? Like bottom up, like Marshmallow the Hognose on TikTok, bottom up, or top down, like Barcheck saying, I think blue-tongued skinks are the next big thing. Everyone should go buy them. I know both of them have a role, but in the current time, which one would incite like a market shift more?
Go, Dave.
I was gonna ask about your marshmallow comment. I didn't understand that. Are we talking like a hognose eating a hard-boiled egg on YouTube video kind of thing, or what are we talking about
It's
right
like
now?
a famous hognose. It's like Baguette the blue-tongued skink, who's
Yeah.
also like rooting for you know
Marshmallow
I don't
Hognose.
social media, guys. We talked about this.
sorry.
I'm not hip with that
They're
stuff.
literally like famous snakes and lizards, or like linguini, the Transpagos red snake. It's like a famous snake.
Right.
That's how popular they are now. So it feels like bottom up is more important. But then like maybe those people are never breeders though, or never get into the hobby. They're just like, oh, it's fucking cute, and it doesn't push it as much as like Justin Kabilka saying, I love Bowen's pythons. I don't know, like that's what I'm gonna do now. Like, does top down work more for the breeder part, and it doesn't ever really affect pets, or what? How do we parse that?
Well, I think top down is going to work more for. I know you're talking about species, but as far as morphs and like projects, top down is going to win because bottom up what you're talking about. This is more of like hobbyist pet kind of like interested people. But there's way more of these like people that are doing like what you're calling bottom up, Galaxy Xotics, where they're doing like hognose snakes. But the thing is, they do other species like like they have tomato frogs. Does that raise the interest in tomato frogs a bit? Yeah, that's just gonna be.
I don't know. It's very weird because sometimes something like linguini is really popular, but I don't think people are killing themselves for Transpagos.
Yeah. I still don't think Transpagos are flying out to I don't think there's like a mass increase in that.
Right.
But a lot of times I really think it has to do with the species. Like you're talking about like the uniqueness of the species and adding to the popularity. When I was keeping Western hognose at first, I was always so surprised. I'm like, how are these not like the #1 most popular species of snake? And they weren't even #2, or I'd say even #3 then, or even #4. Corn snakes, boas, ball pythons strongly superseded them. People would tell me all the time because, I'd be breeding leopard geckos, and they knew I was into genetics even when I was in my teens. Like, anybody that's going, or seeing me at shows a lot, and they'd always say, well, if you want to do morphs to make money, you should do ball pythons. I'm like, yeah, they're cool. I like ball pythons a lot. I like the genetics. I've had a few, but they're not my main interest. I really like hognose snakes. But over time, hognose they're definitely right up there with ball pythons. People don't completely see it. There is some aspects where they don't understand, like markets over in some of these Asian countries, hognose are drastically more popular. And some of it has to do with laws and stuff because the legality in certain areas of ball pythons, since they're CITES, they're actually not allowed to own them. But the uniqueness of hognose, they're small, and then also all the abundance of morphs have really prompted so much more interest. And so when you have a bunch of breeders really, promoting things and like being like, hey, I really like this, species. It's a lot of fun to work with. There's all these cool new projects. It leads to people like Marshmallow Hognose, getting a really nice snow hognose. And, but hognose, they kind of just market themselves really as far as being like a good pet snake. You post a video of them just doing stuff. You don't even have to put words in there. You could just put a caption. I got this one hognose like trying to dig in my hand and just going like this. And I just put something like, I don't know, you got to itch your nose and you don't have arms because you're a snake. So I put something stupid like that. And it was, and people see it and they're like, yeah, I want a hognose now.
Well, a hognose have, in all honesty, probably been the most successful colubrid ever. With what prices have gone, compared to ball pythons, I think they go for the most out of any colubrid project with the combos.
Yeah, definitely. There's crazy stuff. you know, like when leucistics were first being sold and they were kind of like people didn't really want to sell them. You know, of course, that's like when, you know, that's when prices go for the most, but there's people paying $25,000 for leucistic males. And yeah. So, and there's still that, you know, popularity. I sold a hognose a few months ago for $14,000 for just one.
Crazy. Is it because like they like a lot of people don't like snakes that look like snakes, like just like generic colubrid body form? I'm convinced now that's why things work, is because they're not very snake looking. Like the more cartoonish they are, a hognose or a ball python, which is like these distorted body forms that are sort of strange and fat and not scary looking, like the better. And so like those species, no matter what they are, just are more universally appreciated by even just like casual pet people. And that's what sort of fuels the morph breeder side of it, you know?
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, what kicked off the hognose was, I guess, Richard Evans. You know, he liked hognose snakes a lot, and he lived right into kind of the heartland where there's a lot of like hognose. Lubbock, Texas area, and then even a little south of there, like Midland, Texas, all of like West Texas, and then, you know, the hognose are fairly abundant in the wild, and there's a lot of ranchers out there and stuff. And I don't know exactly because I'm not Richard Evans, but he did get an albino hognose, and at that point, I don't know if he was breeding that many of them. But when there was an albino and he acquired it, then there was a reason to start breeding them more. And I think he was already breeding some at that point, getting ones in the wild. And then I know he'd put out flyers and stuff and put like things up at pet shops, like looking for, you know, hognose snakes. I'll give you like, I don't know what he was paying. He wasn't paying very much. It was like in the 90s, mid 90s, like $15, $20 or something like that. And I know even kids and then ranchers would collect hognose they'd find on their properties, and you'd get gravid females, let them lay their eggs, and, you know, kind of like looking for new morphs. And then he'd resell the babies. I'd hear stories about people that buy them wholesale for $25 each. They'd get them in like milk cartons, like all the babies, and then like Pringles cans. He said the ones were still in the eggs, they were pipped, and so when they were pipped, he'd just send them out. And yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. And that, if you got a shipment like that nowadays, you imagine like wholesale lot of 10 hognose on Morph Market. I'll buy those, and they like send them out. They come in a fucking Pringles can and contain through the post office, and they're all still in their eggs. Man, Darian would have a field day for that. Get a picture of that. Oh, they'd be like, oh man, the meme content on this. It'll be like weeks and weeks going, you know. So, but anyway, that was different times back then. But what really started interest was the availability, the uniqueness. And then there was morphs. And, you know, I remember even trying to find hognose back then, it was really tough. But, yeah, it's like you said, it's the facial structure and just the uniqueness of the snake. What comes first, the uniqueness? Probably uniqueness and availability, because that has to come first before you're, you know, kind of getting morphs. Because you have to start getting in a decent amount of them before you can start finding these.
Right. Do you think... I mean, I think this, but you can chime in. Hognoses, even though to me they are a beginner snake, but they're a little harder than corn snakes, have replaced corn snakes as like the default recommendation for starter colubrid.
Yeah, I think so. What are you going to say, Dave?
Well, why do you think they're harder than corn snakes?
Corn snakes, you could, I don't know, feed them like air. They're like an air plant snake. They're really hard to kill. Like I've seen people do terrible things to them, and they're fine. I think hognose are ever so slightly harder to get started. I put one in a bioactive tank. I would never recommend it because you can't find them. They're too scared of you when you go to dig them out to feed them. So like a corn snake is a little bit better about that, in my opinion. I have all of them. They're all fine, right? There's different versions of fine, but I think the normal human, a corn snake is easier, but it is not as boopable or whatever the fuck. You know?
Yeah, if you get like a well-started baby corn snake and you want to throw it in like a 20-gallon aquarium with flowers, plants, you know, Hulk action figures and all kinds of other crazy shit, vines, ropes, all kinds of stuff. This person needs to text me. There we go. And you know, and you put the corn snake in there and you put in food, yeah, it's gonna eat. If you do that with a hognose snake, I have people that do that, and it's nice because you know the person really cares because they they have this setup. The one person, they had the wallpaper in the back of the large enclosure with the snake's name, like Rory and stuff. And there's like all this garbage in there. And they're like, man, I'm really trying. I'm like, yeah, it's like your hognose is a fraction the size of literally everything you have in there. It's going to want to find a couple little spots in there and kind of hunker down. And, you know, most of this environment's all new smells. It's foreign to it. And, yeah, they definitely have a harder time settling in. You know, if you're going to compare them, you know, corn snake to hognose, well started, which one's going to adjust faster? Definitely corn snakes. Hognose are definitely a little trickier unless you're doing like rack system setups just like the person. But there's ways to go around it. Like when people inquire with me and they want to get a hognose snake and they're like, and they tell me, I'm like, you're going to set it up in a terrarium. I'm like, well, I'd suggest to start with a larger one. I got this perfect hognose for you. And when I do that, there's actually very little of that happens. And then I tell people the tips and tricks. If you have a defensive hognose, a lot of times picking them up. Hognose is the only species it has to work with. I pick up hognose a lot of times. They're defensive, and I pick them up, get them to kind of like work with them, where you kind of like you know, go with their movement and you calm them down, and then they'll eat right in your hand. If you have a ball python that doesn't eat, or corn snake that doesn't want to eat, or anything else, or a bug, you're not going to put it in your hand to try to get it to eat. But it works for hognose. Can Jessica and Dave talk for a bit? What does she want? Oh,
yeah.
Come on. All right.
Dave, are you frozen? A little bit.
I never know when I'm frozen. That was a long gasp. I could have been frozen a couple of times. I think the internet is failing me today.
It's all right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've always thought hognose made pretty good pets. I mean, I feel like I've seen more trouble producing corn snakes over the years, where I've had more trouble getting baby corn snakes going. Once you get them going, they're great, but I feel like I've had more trouble with them over hognose. And again, I don't know. I just feel like with handling for kids, it's a slower moving species compared to a corn snake, so you don't have to worry about anything super flighty for them. The rear fang thing, I think, is the biggest turnoff in the pet industry. People think about that a lot. And that's something that I would discuss with anybody getting it. But
I would handle a corn snake all day for a hognose.
Really?
It holds on to you. The hognose is like, ugh, I'm going to die. Also, I will hiss, and then I'll fall off your hand. So I mean, they're not fighting back, but they're not doing like the boa thing where it's like semi-arboreal, so it can hold back onto you, which is always the difference between boas and balls to me too. Like a boa is a more articulate animal.
Yeah, I agree with that.
None of this matters; it's just personal preference. But like, what a human at a show thinks the second they look at it and pick it up or see it on Instagram determines all of our fates, right? Like. Your species lives or die by these very arbitrary minor differences. Like, is it fat? Is it cute? Is it sassy? Like, those things are actually like critical to your whole business, and you didn't even know it. And so, like, there's a lot. Like the leopard gecko people are always like lamenting their whatever. It's not as good as it was back in the day. And then, what do we need to do to like make it more hype? And so I have to think about that for corn snakes. But I don't think the essential corn snake is what people really want if they could have a hognose.
Okay. I just feel like they handle better for kids. And this is good. We all have opinions on this because that reflects what other people are thinking. What was I going to ask you, though? So where's snake discovery on this scale? Is she pushing from the bottom up or from the top down when it comes to influence?
I think top down at this point. You don't have that many subs.
I feel like both.
All right.
Wait, let's read what Paul said. Here are the pets are annual averages per store. Is this number of snakes sold?
Like per store per year, and there's 5,000 plus stores. Is that what we're saying here?
Maybe.
Okay.
So
one corn a month, one hognose every month and a half, one tortoise a month.
But mostly bearded dragons. Wild. That's crazy.
That makes sense. Bearded dragons are very popular to push a lot. They have a really cute, unique look. They handle very well when they're small because they're like a basking lizard, so they'll just sit there. Leopard geckos are definitely kind of a little more skittish, and if they're not being handled a lot, you got to work with them. Hognose snakes are definitely very low on that list because the availability. There's a lot of, especially just recently, pet stores are having an easier time getting hognose snakes. 1 and 2 years ago, they'd have like a lot of stores that have a hard time getting hognose snakes. And then there's this, believe it or not. I was in the Seattle area, and there's some exotic stores and pet stores around there. And I contacted them. I'm like, I have some extra, like, normal hognose right now available. And this one store is like, yeah, we don't have any hognose. He goes, I could probably buy one. And I'm like, okay. And then he wasn't really that interested. It's just one. And then there's other stores like I seen he had corn snakes. I'm like, you ever sell hognose? He goes, oh, I don't work with hognose. And he's like, yeah, I'd never have a hognose here for sale. And I hung up the phone. I'm like, what a stupid asshole. You wouldn't sell a hognose thing? They're really cute and cool. He's like, you don't like that? Be like, I own a pet store or whatever. And it's like, I don't like bull snakes. Somebody's like, you want to sell some bull snakes? Like, I don't work with bull snakes. It's like, it's like, how can you like one snake, not the other? Like, there's certain snake species I don't like as much as the others. But if I owned a shop, unless it was like something like crazy, like dragon scale snakes, it's like, I don't carry those. Why don't you carry those? Because it's going to die in like a month, dude. And so you got to keep it at like 72 degrees and feed it frogs. It's very difficult. So aside that, if it's fairly easy to keep and it's popular and you want to introduce people to the hobby, the last thing you say to somebody on the phone is like, I don't want hognose. You get that guy on the podcast. Obviously, the guy doesn't know anything about snakes, shouldn't even be on a podcast. But I can't believe it. Like, no hognose. I'm like, what the fuck?
Man. Well, speaking of bearded dragons, like I don't follow bearded dragons. I don't know. To me, I feel like there are less bearded dragons more and more at reptile shows. Does anybody agree with that statement? Like less people are specialized bearded dragon breeders.
Wasn't there and I was going to try to go a whole episode without bringing up viruses because I know how much you love them, but wasn't there something that was going around in bearded dragons X amount of years ago that might have actually ruined a couple collections? That's
a genovirus?
Was that what it was?
Mm-hmm. It's still in bearded dragons.
And now I do know, if you know the right guy, that I don't know if it's out of El Salvador or where it is right now, but I do know that there's a lot of bearded dragons being produced overseas and sent back. And I hear the price you can buy them at for some of these higher end morphs are so cheap, it doesn't even make sense to produce them in captivity here anymore. I don't know if those have any factors with it at all, but we'll talk about that off camera. I'm not giving up.
Well, some of those, they like the prices are coming in are pretty cheap, but I feel like beard is the way you have to keep them and everything. It's not like a leopard gecko you can just put in a rack. A bearded dragon, them. Imagine like this. Imagine somebody's like, man, every sold leopard geckos coming in ball pythons. Somebody's like, hey, I got like 100 cheap bearded dragons. You want them? The guy's like, I've done that. And this is just a hypothetical, made up scenario. He gets in these bearded dragons, and he's got 100 of them. These things eat so much, and then you have to have lights on them if you're going to do them correctly, and you want them to stay healthy. I really learned like how much of like they're like tough. Because when I at one point I was selling a lot of geckos to Korea. And the guy's like, hey, can you help me get some bearded dragons too? I'm like, well, usually I don't do that stuff, but yeah, I'll help you find some bearded dragons. So he'd be like, this is what I'm looking for, real high red ones. So I'd find these bearded dragon people, and I'd buy some bearded dragons from them. This one guy bought some red juveniles from him. Wasn't even that many, it was like 12. And this happened a couple times. After I noticed a pattern within 2 or 3 people, I was like, huh. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I'd buy the bearded dragons, and I wasn't trying to do it on purpose, but I was like, didn't want to take them right away because I wanted to get them close to export because I'm like, I don't really have anywhere to set these up. And so I told him like, hey, I don't really have anything to set these up, but the export's in 2 weeks. Can you hang on to these for 2 weeks? For a typical person, if you say, hey, can you hang on to this for like 12, 14, 15 days? It's like, oh, okay, that's not a problem. Every single bearded dragon person was like, they're like, no, what are you talking about? You got to take these things like right now. And I was like, what the hell are these things? Are they like a curse? Everybody's like trying to get them like out the door that day. They're like, I'll ship them to you today. And then I started talking to them, and then basically the thing is, like, a lot of these guys, because they have big clutches, they keep them together. If you don't feed them every day, they'll nip at each other's tails, toes. You have to have the lights on them. You got to, give them pans of water to go in and soak and drink. They're shitting everywhere. They're eating a lot. And basically, yeah, it's like the movie Gremlins, but with bearded dragons. And so you just want these things out of there if you have a bunch of them. So there are a lot of maintenance. So I feel like if people are getting like, because there's red monsters I heard and coming very cheap, but to flip them and to hang on, like, if you know that you're doing it really quick, if you have to hang on to these things, your profit margin has to be pretty large because just to care for these things is like a lot of maintenance and a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a species where like fecundity, I think, hurts them because like every female you sell can make a trillion that are also really difficult to take care of. So like who wants to be the breeder of bearded dragons? Some people do, but it's like it'd be better if you were in Florida and they were half outside most of the year, because it would just be easier. So it limits, like, to me, the high end part of the market because less people want to even participate. It's just the one pet they have.
No, for sure. And when I was looking at that list he put up of like different animals and like how many of what are being sold a year too, it's pretty obvious. Like some of these species, like he's saying, are not easy to work with. A lot of overhead. It's not like they're readily available. It's not like they're going to be on 5,000 wholesale lists like a ball python would be on. So I think a lot of that factors in too, because there's a lot of species that I think would do amazing in pet stores, but I don't think there's enough availability out there of those species to put them in pet stores.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
was there iguanas on that list? I don't know if you put iguanas on there. Are we done with iguanas?
we can talk about iguanas. I'll go
I don't
back
want
to
to
the
talk
list.
about iguanas. I'm just asking if it's over or not.
I think iguanas are over. I mean, I got an iguana from Petland when I was 10, which is not the right time, age, whatever, and that was a terrible decision.
Should have bought two.
I know. I put it in a 10-gallon tank. And it somehow survived a long time. Like we put it outside a lot, but it was not a good decision. I actually traded it back in for a boa. So that was my first snake. And I was like, this is a way better pet.
That's a good trade.
Yeah. I mean, I had to put some money in. Let me be honest. Okay. But I'm glad they're gone. But I think people maybe don't give the pet industry enough credit for making some good decisions, like not selling kids Savannah monitors at scale or iguanas. Sometimes, I mean, we're not always being good, but we're doing better. Like it's much better. And reptile shows usually smell better because there's less dead imports shoved under the box. There's still some, but there's less than there was like 20 years ago. But I mean, could we fix this? Like, do we need this many, I don't know, sulcata tortoises at shows? Or
Well, I don't know. They sell out so fast, do we not? And I've always heard good things about it. Here's the thing. Certain species do better in certain states. If I was a British dragon breeder, I'd want to be in Arizona or somewhere I could have a greenhouse. Of course, that's logical. Maybe Texas. I try to find ways to work with the species where I can keep my expenses down. But I don't know. Do you hate sulcatas? Do you think they're bad for the pet trade? Do you think all tortoises are bad for the pet trade?
I think some tortoises are too big and they live too long, and it's not ethical to keep something you would need to beget to your 2 generations descendants. I'm not, but that's just me.
No, I get that.
If you need to put it in your will and then hope your kid makes it long enough to put it in their will.
Hey man, oldest ball python on
decisions.
record was 48 and a half years old. Do we have to put our ball pythons in the will?
That's the oldest one though.
Well, maybe they could all get that old if we did our best.
Maybe. I don't know. Like my master's degree was on wood turtles. I'm pro turtle, okay? But I think they're too smart, too long lived, and probably too. Maybe I'm putting them on a pedestal. We don't need as many. They're like buckets of sulcatas down here. If you want a little cute sulcata, $50.
Well,
how big it gets or where you're going to keep it.
Yeah, think about popularity of species or how readily they are available and cheap based on third world countries. I mean, a lot of these, we always make the argument, these cities, these different countries, these people are out there collecting these savannas because that's all they have to live off of. And if they weren't doing it for the pet trade, they'd be doing it for something else. They'd just be going to food maybe somewhere else. Maybe that's a better fate when everything's said and done in our eyes. But like, you look at a lot of these species that are like the ones that are really heavy hitters like that. A lot of these are coming from like poor economies and countries where they're just attacking it any way they can.
That's fine, but that doesn't mean that like there's a little bit of like the supply coming in sort of incites the demand, and then there's demand inciting the supply.
And I mean, you tell someone $5 for a Savannah monitor and they know they could sell it for 20 and they know they're going to be gone in a minute because $20 is nothing to a lot of people. That's why it keeps on doing what it's doing.
Okay.
And that's the truth.
I mean, that's why it is how it is, but that doesn't mean it has to always be that way.
No, of course not. And there's always room for improvement. And again, this hobby's so young, we will see changes. But why we are where we are right now, again, is a lot of times just because other countries supply us. Other countries give us incentives to work with certain things, and people attack it for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I just think turtles are too smart, and we should fucking leave them alone.
I like turtles.
Listen, my research was on turtles that were older than me and been living in a creek, doing their thing quietly by themselves. They have high, fatality or mortality as babies, but really high, really low mortality as adults. So any sort of pressure on the adult population, the tiniest bit of poaching, whatever, the whole population will collapse because it needs to be ultra stable to have like these like minimal recruitment events. So yes, you should farm them or whatever, but then like, what do we do with turtles that live longer than people? I don't know. I think we should leave them alone for the most part.
I get that.
Red-eared sliders are definitely produced the most as far as farm scale goes. But yeah, like you're saying, Jessica, like that's why there's so many sulcatas, because obviously in the wild, something's eating a lot of these babies, or a lot of the babies just aren't making it due to they're not able to find enough resources. But yeah, the sulcatas, I don't know exactly, but I'm pretty sure their average clutches are like in the 40 egg range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's crazy.
And then these breeders, they keep them outside, and it's very easy to take care of.
There was this paper years ago, and I think me and Junior talked about it, and where it talked about like different pet industries and how strong they were, and what their market was. And long story short, reptiles were surging, reptiles and amphibians, exotic pets. And when you looked at the number breakdowns, a lot of that was turtle sales. By double, triple, or quadruple other species, you would think it's literally turtle sales are why we are getting the numbers we are and the new people coming in a way. Like why we were doing better than other hobbies at that point.
Right. Turtles are lucky in some ethnic traditions, and I think most people look at a turtle and they're not offended by it like normal people. They're like, oh, it's a turtle, that's pretty cool, I'll help it cross the road, and they would swerve to hit a snake, right? So like there's a more universality to it, but I don't know.
There's definitely a lot of love for turtles. People love sea turtles. Yeah, but yeah, there's like, I can't remember what species it is, but I'll have to answer. There's one species of turtle in China that's very popular, and they're highly sought after. And the one guy was telling me, is actually, because both Hong Kong and China, and the guy in Hong Kong was telling me, he goes, some of these guys that have the best collections are very secretive of where they even live or even have these things, because they said people will break in to steal them. And some of these turtles are like $30,000 each. So, I mean, that's kind of like, I guess, related to the topic, but not exactly. We were talking about turtles, so I just kind of said that.
I think we went to morals over anything at this point. You ever see how they sell cigarettes up in Canada? You get the pack of cigarettes and it shows like a rotting set of lungs on there, and they're like, hey, man, you sure you want this? Well, maybe that's what we need at pet stores, just like a true disclaimer on every species of what they're really getting involved in, and then the horror pictures on there too, maybe. How about that?
You could do that. You want to buy a red-eared slider, then show them like a farm where they have them buckets dumping out. It's like, you really want to support?
Well, and then what about the fact that most of them are Russians? When I worked at Petco, that's all we sold was Russians and sliders. But because they all had to be over 4 inches.
I've never seen Russians anywhere ever.
Oh, really? The Russian tortoises are imported that much? I was going to say that like Russian and Greek tortoises are in hermits. They're really good. But this custom reptile habitats is making me change my mind with that importation. Now, if they're captive born, they just need to stop importing 40,000 ball pythons. And it's like, they can get, like, we already talked about that, but just buy some extra morphs. Just have somebody streamline this stuff from the excess cheap ball pythons, get them into the pet stores, and but yeah, you're gonna have a hard time so most of these tortoises and turtles are sounding like they are still farm raised though, because if there's that many Russians coming, I didn't know there's that many Russian tortoises.
I never see Russians. I always see sulcatas, redfoots. Maybe it's regional, but I've never seen enough Russians think they were the top import.
Well, I think the contracts they have with Petco and PetSmart like suck up all of the inventory. Like that's the contract. That's the CITES import. And it doesn't necessarily go to shows like for yokels. I mean, a little bit, but like we always had 1 or 2 Russians at Petco the whole time I was there. And everyone you go to, I don't know about now, but it used to be, that was like on the planogram, an adult Russian tortoise that was imported.
Huh. I'm surprised they didn't get canceled with everything else Russian. I don't know if you remember, we don't drink vodka anymore. We don't let their cat breeders come to the shows anymore. Like, we hit that pretty hard for a second there.
Well, since tortoises and turtles are still popular, should we all actually be breeding them instead? And whatever moral qualms I have about it should not exist, or I should not worry about it.
Well, I mean, moral qualms matter. Our opinions matter. I don't think our opinions mean shit. I think at the end of the day, everything's going to happen in the way it
that's
does.
true.
And, it is what it is. But, just our opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Is that depressing? What species,
Yeah.
Brad? So we've done 2 species so far?
Fuck,
We've done
dude,
3
I don't know.
species?
We got lost a little bit.
Well, we did turtles and tortoises. We kind of grouped all that together.
Yeah.
So we just did a few hundred species there or more. We did corn snakes a bit, leopard geckos. We talked about ball pythons. We talked about hognose. So we're getting them. We got to talk about crested. Talk about cresteds.
Yeah, let's go back to blue tongues, Dave.
Okay.
I know that's your jammerino.
I love that market.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think it's going to take to make them replace bearded dragons? That's my dream, because I think that'd be better for the world.
Well, we just need more people breeding them. There's never really been. It's really weird because at one point, I mean, there's never really been enough of them on the market. There's never been enough where you'll start seeing them in Petco's or PetSmarts. They're not necessarily a hard species to breed, but I mean, they do come with their difficulties. There is some inconsistencies. Honestly, I think bearded dragons are horrible pets. I think that's way too much maintenance for me. I don't want to have to deal with all those bugs. Blue-tongued skinks are great. They handle well. They can deal with extreme temperatures because they're used for brumation. Their diet's very easy, something you can have in your refrigerator or cupboards. There's so many things about that species that makes them amazing, but it's another thing, like price point's always the difference. Even back when they were only like $100, $150, they didn't really fly off the table. And then at $250, they started flying off the table, the bar check effect, because people wanted them. And honestly, I mean, I was helping Ray Gerge sell animals back then, and we had his multi-gene triple het, this, that, and the other on the table, and Ray wanted $1,100, and people spent $1,100 and bought him as a pet. But then that faded really quick. The peak happened, and then it started going down. But I don't know what it's going to take, because I don't know anybody who's just trying to smash out a bunch of normals. I don't think any one person's ever truly going to mass produce them, and I don't think we're ever going to have enough people in the hobby that are ever going to be working with them that they're going to be like this huge species like I believe they deserve to be. Now, anybody working with them, I'm not trying to deter you in any way. I think it's an amazing species, but even Bill Brandt got into him at one point, and his plan was to put him in Petco. And I want to say after about 4 or 5 years of trying, he decided that it was too inconsistent. He tried ultrasounding. He tried everything. He tried, I think, even more males, different breeding techniques, different diets, and he never got his numbers high enough. Like, he never got it to where maybe 70% were going, 80% were going. And I think for that reason, it's going to be a troublesome species. And I also think that's a species that, like a lot of other species, we're better off just producing our own animals, raising them in our own conditions, and then bringing them into breeding. When the whole blue-tongued skink thing happened, everybody wanted them, and they were on fauna for 4 seconds and selling. I was buying a lot of adults. A lot of those adults never bred for me. They would breed, but they would never cycle properly. And I think that's because I was buying adult animals from other people from other parts of the country, and I just think they were kind of doing their own thing. There's a lot of people breeding their blue-tongued skinks right now. I'm sorry, guys. I don't sleep a lot anymore. A lot of people are breeding their blue tongues right now where mine are sleeping right now. They're going to be sleeping for another month, maybe another 2 months if they want to sleep for 2 months. When they wake up, I'm going to get them going. But, everyone's schedule is a little different. So, again, if I buy from a guy who would be breeding his animal right now typically, and here I am making it sleep for another month or two, I could still completely miss that animal's window. So I think there's a lot of factors in blue tongues that we're going to get better, but again, not enough people are making them. And man, if I could sell them for $100 again, and I am tempted, I bet you I could sell 1,000 of those things a year. But $250, that's a lot of money for some people, man, especially for a pet.
Is it possible that just any oviviviparous species will never reach scalability because it's like inherently harder for them to, be as fecund as a oviparous species? Like, that's always my thought.
Boas did pretty good. Red-tailed boas are up there. I think the thing that hurts them a bit is maybe their size, but then you got the Nicaraguans and stuff. But
and then
I think they did good because they were imported at scale, and that's all anybody had. But like,
possibly,
like the little ones, like rosy boas and stuff, they will never scale the same because they take 2 years to get to recover, and like it's just harder. Like I don't know if anybody cares, but if a species decides to go ovoviviparous, it's like the probability of them going extinct goes a lot higher. It's actually like a response to like thermal being too cold in the environment and needing to protect the incubation site, which is why it's internalized. But it ends up being so much harder on the mothers long term that like it ends up taking away from like a K selection. So it's actually just harder to like shunt energy from food to baby because you're doing work. The mom's doing work. So I'm just like, an oviviparous species will always be more fecund, period. It's too hard. Unless you're talking about Candoya, but then they like put no effort into each individual baby. And then they're like, whatever, there's a bunch of spaghetti that I don't care about. But who knows? I just think they're better pets overall. So like in terms of total suffering in the hobby, it'd be nice if it wasn't bearded dragons.
Agreed. Yeah, like I said, I think there's a lot of factors, and blue tongues too. I don't want to seem negative because I'll be honest, it's probably a species that I'll put more work into anything else I'm working with right now. It's probably something I'll put the next 10 years of my life into trying to find ways of making better looking animals. Like I said, there's just been a big inconsistency, and like I said, the fall off in popularity was really weird too. Because I remember when Barczyk started talking about them, everybody wanted them, and I was talking to Brian about coming over here one time to see the collection, do some filming. And he didn't want to do anything with the blue tongues. He said he wanted to do everything but blue tongues because he said that his videos were not getting the hits they used to when he put out blue tongue content. Just abruptly, it just stopped. Might have been a few factors in that. And I always tell people too, like around the time that blue tongues are becoming popular, that was also around the time that Joe Ball over in Australia was making all these amazing combos with everything they have over there. And even though we couldn't have it, I still think just seeing that content online created a little more of a like for the species. And right now, where there's really not that many people in blue tongues that are posting that much about them, talking about project development, talking about how great of pets they are.
Alex started his podcast.
Oh, yeah, of course. I got that one coming up. And yeah, honestly, out of everybody, him and Tiki Geckos put a huge effort. Cheryl Matula puts in a huge effort on the species. I don't post anything ever. I got 100 of them. I literally have 100 of them downstairs. I never show anything off. I never even fucking talk about the things. But I love the species. I've always loved the species. And I don't know. I got a lot of things I want to be remembered by. I hope I do enough with blue tongues that I'm not just remembered for ball python breeding. I want to be remembered for what I can do in blues. But I also think there's a lot of work that needs to be done with that species.
Does the Asian market like blue tongues?
You can't send them to Asia legally anymore, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Like 4 or 5 years ago, I heard that legally we couldn't. Then some people say you can. Hong Kong was buying them pretty consistently. But another good example of that is go to Daytona. It used to be on Friday, the Asian buyers would buy every last one of them, and you could not find another one in the building. Now you go through Daytona, there are fucking skinks on everyone's table, and they're not selling because the overseas guys aren't buying them like they were. So yes, that does change the market a lot for us.
What if we pick a smaller skink, like pink tongues or emerald tree skinks? Like there's probably a point where it's too small to be like commercialized more, but like, is it the size too?
I think just finding something else with skink in the title is not really like what it is to own like a northern blue tongue. Pink tongue skinks are cool. Yeah, I've heard that. I think I've heard litter sizes in the 60s before.
That's highly fecund. I'm in.
Yeah, but again, they're neat. But now we're talking like a completely different body structure. We're talking completely different care. I always felt like there was just something special about northerns. One thing that could bring their popularity up is if we stop bringing all the Irian Jayas, Marukis. Like, if all that just stops tomorrow, northerns are up in value. Mm-hmm. Even us, like, I believe we can. I don't even know if we can really even bring blue tongues in anymore because, I remember talking to Don Patterson about getting a couple cool ones from Canada, And I heard that was kind of a gray area, even getting them from Canada to the United States. So like I said, all that, I don't know enough about it. And I hear from so many different people, so many different things. I hear that some people are enforcing it. I hear other borders are not enforcing it. I don't know. I think there's just so many little variables of that species right now that I think all that hurts us. And again, the overseas market being gone right now really hurts us.
So you're not sure if Iron Giants are still imported?
Oh, no, they are. I'm just saying if we stop that could help what's in the country already.
So I was going to say, because I thought just because the Australian, the Northerns, I could kind of see it. Because I heard somebody a couple of years ago, they were trying to import a bunch of like morphs, like Captain Morgan morphs from Hong Kong, or maybe it was Korea. I think it's Korea. And then, the Fish and Wildlife was like, no, you're not going to import those because we know those are descendants from smuggled animals, captive-born smuggled animals. It's weird. It's like, actually, it's like these were never like illegally collected animals. They were actually legally collected in Australia, bred, but then the transportation process was just illegal because Australia doesn't allow exportation. So they were just legal captive-born animals that weren't legally transported.
Yeah, and again, like in Northerns, the only morph we've ever had was the Northern White. And don't get me wrong, there's been others in the United States, I believe, but that's one that's in the United States now and has been made for sale. Just a couple years ago, that was like a $12,000 animal. I don't know how cheap they are now. I'm not going to say how cheap you can get them, but I did see one poster. They were at Petco a few months ago for $999. And I heard a guy went in there when they had half off reptiles and he had 20% off. I think he paid like a little over $300 for a Northern White that somebody paid $12,000 for just a couple years before that.
What's the lawsuit about, Alex?
It sounds funny. There's USARK suing Fish and Wildlife, so I know it's good. It made me smile real big.
Well, send me that information because I think we're going to have something coming up with Phil Goss soon, and I'd like to talk to him about that if there's something on the table with blue tongues.
All right. Speaking of suing U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, let's go back in time a little bit to when the first Lacey Act came out and before the lawsuit worked, how that hurt all of the animals on the Lacey Act's pricing and like how like people just like gave up or whatever, including boas because they were on it for a little bit. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Dave.
I mean, I sold my boas because the Lacey Act scared the fuck out of me, and I was poor and working factory jobs. And if I lost my boas, my idea of owning a reptile business was over. So those laws did scare me to get rid of a lot of the early boas I got, which sucks. And I switched to ball pythons, and then inevitably went back to boas. But scared money, man. Look at what the Burmese pythons did during that time. Once that law came into effect and you couldn't cross state lines with them, the value of your animals in your state actually went way up. And I also remember a lot of those Burmese python guys ran to Texas because a lot of their buyers were already in Texas. And a lot of those guys went out of business when they realized they were all in the same state and there was nobody really buying from them. But no Burms. I remember albino Burms being at the show back in 2002 for like $125, $200. I remember after the Lacey Act passed, going to like a Tennessee show, and a guy had them for $450 on his table, and he sold every last one of them. So that all came back down to supply and demand. And, when you're limited to maybe a couple breeders in your state, I mean, it really kind of helped your business for some people as long as you didn't run away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes.
What do you think about the future? Because, technically, I want to win forever, but I don't expect to win forever. So, I don't know.
Well, I think the biggest problem we're going to have moving forward is losing the small battles. I think they realize that when they go after all 50 states and they try to do just a blanket law, that we can fight that. But on December 5th, it's now illegal to sell and breed Burmese pythons in Georgia now. Anybody who has Burmese pythons in Georgia right now have to get their animals chipped. And I have to find out, I got to talk to Phil about it, but I'm not even sure if the people that have those animals there now are still even going to be able to sell them or if that window's over now. So, I do think that those laws from Florida are going to bleed into the neighboring states. We saw that with tegus. We're seeing that with Burmese pythons now with the Georgia laws. And I do think that those connecting states, Georgia, the Carolinas, and are probably going to be the ones that are going to be most affected. I think it's going to trickle over to Louisiana, Alabama over time. I don't know about Texas. I feel like Texas is kind of a little more, I don't want to say liberal thinking, but Yeah, they're not going to take away something from you that, they just don't really take things from you. They do and they don't. So I don't know. We've been having this conversation for 30 years. I mean, go open up an old vivarium magazine and you can find articles where it shows you how many dogs kill people every year, how many snakes kill people every year, how many horses kill people every year. And that was one of the arguments that they were making back in the day, that, these things aren't the nuisance you're trying to make them out to be. But I don't know, man. I mean, Florida, I always thought, I'm surprised Florida's still functioning. Like, if you were involved in U.S. Art back in the mid-2000s, 2008, 2009, you wouldn't think Florida could still be doing what they're doing, but Florida's still thriving as a state for reptiles. And they've got the most invasives, they've got the most problems, they get the most attacks, but they're still functioning. I think this, how about this? When we lose Florida completely, I give the hobby 20 more years, because I think when Florida goes away, it'll take at least 20 years before we lose the rest of the United States.
Yeah, but Florida Fish and Wildlife are kind of like, they're like, I'm trying to think of a way not to use any like foul language.
Go ahead.
Oh God!
On this show, it's fine.
Okay. Well, Florida Fish and Wildlife, like I talk to other fish and wildlife people and DNR people, and the ones that know a little bit about that, they're like, oh yeah, Florida, they're a bunch of fucking dumb assholes. They're just like and I also hear from people in U.S. Art that FWC, Florida. Specifically FWC seems to get talked into the ear the most by like PETA and other entities like kind of like that. The Humane Society's like essentially PETA now too, but these other states, I don't know, because I know one of the head DNR guys in Illinois, Tim over there, my friend, he's does animal rehab. He knows people in the DNR, like over here, it's more DNR kind of regulating certain things. I always forget. But like even when I got like my beaded lizards, I was like, I got to make sure this is like okay, and I want these guys saying it. I didn't contact Fish and Wildlife. I contacted the DNR here, and then like other states. But these other states, like Florida, is all gung ho because they get this money for all these invasive. These other states aren't having these invasive problems. Florida really likes to tout the whole Burmese python things. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of invasive plants that are doing way more damage, invasive insects. All the most invasive, like the invasive species that are doing the most damage on the ecosystem aren't the result of pet trade invasives. They're due to imports through cargo and bugs like viburnum leaf beetles. There's a whole list. I wrote them down the one time. And I was like, I'm going to research these and memorize it. I didn't do that. And so anyway, yeah, invasive plants and stuff, throwing off the balance of, algae blooms and lakes and stuff and everything, and different weeds choking things out. That's actually the worst. But Fish and Wildlife, when they talk about like a Burmese python and stuff, they get the most funding. And so they kind of like, I feel like they like the reptile trade, to a degree, because they have like an enemy. And it's like a really easy enemy. It's like, let's get these Burmese pythons. And it's like, they're really only located to the bottom, like, 1/3 more really just the Everglades and some outlying areas. So I think that's the reason, Florida is definitely a little different. So I don't know if Florida goes. I feel like, Florida doesn't have their fish and wildlife doesn't have really any, bearing on these other states. They can't really, tell them what to do.
So in Fish and Wildlife, though, like, you made the comment of like, a little more incompetent in some cases. Now, is that, do you think, because they have to have so many more people, and I'm sure they're bringing them, I'm sure people are going to college to be FWC. I'm sure that they're just kind of getting put in the, are they? And that's fine. Hey, if you're educating yourself going into it, here's the thing. I won't shit on anybody for having to do their job. And the reality is we created this job for them. It's like we're talking about a bunch of geckos that came in through houseplants. We're talking about Burmese pythons. They're all over the Everglades. And same thing with them talking about Nile crocodiles there now. I found papers from years ago them talking about it. I shared a link. Joe Rogan was talking about Nile crocodiles too the other day in the Everglades. He was talking about Burmese pythons. Some reason my link only got 2 likes, and I don't know why, but usually I thought I'd get like 4 likes maybe for that one. It was a great conversation. But when you talk about like the mainstream, that's one of the most popular podcasts in the world talking about our problems in the Everglades with Burmese pythons and Nile crocodiles and other stuff. I mean, that's putting a little more in people's eyes. And Junior, when you talk about like the plants that are doing more damage and everything else, that's not very scary. I'm not going to look at a plant and get scared.
No, and then there's bugs like
that-
there's the
that little
viburnum.
bug? Yeah.
Like most of these the one species of plant is pretty much going to be eradicated, and the emerald ash borer, all the ash trees are going away, and they're keeping seeds from the emerald ash trees because they're hoping that as they spread out and the emerald ash trees eventually get all like extirpated from those locations, they can restart them over, or they'll find a way to get rid of these viburnum leaf beetles and these emerald ash borers. And there's a lot of other, but yeah, they're not scary. What was that?
Lantern flies.
Lantern flies. What the heck? What do those do?
They fuck up the trees.
All right, he says they fuck up the trees. So it's just that's what always happens. And then there's the Japanese beetles. They just fuck up plants and trees. And so yeah, exactly. It's like Burmese pythons. There was this one guy, I can't remember his name. He is in a U.S. Ark comment thread, and he knew a lot about fish and wildlife. And he had a whole mouthful to say about them. And he had and it wasn't all negative, but he was saying there are good people in there. And he says, but a lot of these people that are FWC or fish and wildlife in general are the result of this. And he goes, a lot of them don't know much about these species. Makes sense, because you start asking me about certain species reptiles, I'm not going to know really anything about them. There's so many different species, and it's really hard to identify everything. And we have an actual interest in it. Some of these guys don't have interest. And some of these guys just want to be assholes. I have a cool story about that. It's not cool at all. But I was getting harassed by one of these guys. This guy would see me exporting a lot, and then he started, and this was through California, which is funny, because I stopped actually exporting through Florida because I hate Florida fish and wildlife so much. I started telling other people. I was actually talking to one of our friends, Dave, and he's like, yeah, I got, hassled exporting through Miami. I said, don't export through Miami. I was like, they don't like us. Why give them any business? Go through California. They're a lot nicer. And if you're exporting out to, the west of the United States, you're actually getting a little closer. It's actually saving you some time. I export out of LAX now. Miami, no, because they're dicks. Too big of dicks.
So I heard LAX just hired in the past year, I want to see either 20 or 100 new agents, and they're now thoroughly going through everything there. So how long until you think LA is going to be no different than Miami? Well,
there's this one guy. He called me up 2 hours before I was shipping to my broker, and he goes, hey, you Jeff Gill? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I'm calling about a shipment. He goes, your last ones didn't have rubber bands on them. And I'm like, yeah, why? He goes, well, we had some shipments go through. They weren't rubber banded. And he goes, you need to rubber band those or we're not going to pass them. And I was like, there's 160 containers, and I got 2 hours to ship them. He goes, well, they better be rubber banded. And I was able to do it right in the nick of time. And I was sweating, and it's all horrible. And I'm like, I hate this fucking asshole. I was like, these containers lids never pop off. I was like, you know what the other guy shipped with the ball pythons? They're the show cups, the bigger ones. They're 48 ounce or whatever, and they're real rigid. Yeah, you bounce them around, the lids pop off. And I'm like, dude, I have these they're plastic, but they're more that jelly-ish kind of material. So they kind of lock in. If you bump them, the lids don't pop off. This guy doesn't care though. And this guy, oh my God, he harassed me so much. And then I got an import from another country, and he was threatening me with all kinds of shit. And I was really sick at the time. I was like, dude, I'm really sick right now. What are you doing? And the guy's like, well, it was your responsibility as the importer to tell the exporter to do all this stuff. And I was like, I gave him my co-signing information. And I was like, how is it my fault for not telling somebody else to do something? And so my one friend was even a lawyer, and he goes, yeah, that sounds really stupid, dude. So then I called my broker. We're bitching about this guy. He's like, I'm tired of rubber banding shit. This guy's an asshole. So he said he reported him. He goes, it's not just you. So it wasn't me. It wasn't about me. It was about anybody, which was very nice because I didn't want to be, just picked out. But anyway, so anyhow, he reported him, and then that guy's now on desk duty. And since then, my exports, I don't rubber band them. And yeah, there was one I go and read them afterwards. It's your fish and wildlife thing, the inspection cleared. And then I scroll down, and it's inspection. Sometimes it's partial, and it's yeah, Dave, every time it's full. And I tell him, that's fine. You can inspect all this stuff. I was like, it's going to be really hard to reorganize back in there. I was like, this is what's going to happen. You're going to see a bunch of really cool hognose snakes, and you're going to have to put them back. That's it. The last inspection, it said no inspection. They're probably getting tired of it because they see how I pack this stuff. It's like, go ahead. I dare. Yeah, go find something illegal. You're going to have to plant it. That's the only way you're going to have to frame me. It's like selling hognose snakes, dickhead. They're really popular. I make decent money. I'm not. What am I going to sneak in there? I'm going to sneak in something there and make $1,000. I'm going to risk my entire life over $1,000. Then I'm going to have to pay like 40% tax on it. Shut up. Just look at them real quick, and you can go back to talking to your buddies getting paid hourly.
Slow clap.
That's kind of.
I'm gonna clip that one. Sorry.
Oh man, really?
Yeah.
You're gonna send it right to them. Tag Fish and Wildlife. They're going, oh,
No.
you hear this? Fucker?
No. All right. So wait. So like, boas are not on the injurious species list, but it's been kind of weird to me watch like the flourishing of the retic market because I'm like, it's still on the injurious species list. So if they ever got the power back, the dwarf retic market is going to sort of at least splinter, if not fall apart in certain states. So do you think, I don't know, like the retic market, Burmese market, anything that's still on the injurious species list is like you feel bullish or bearish on it in like the next 10 years? I guess is my question.
Well, first off, I just want to say one thing. I've never really even understood the inner workings of the retic market. Like, I don't mean to be rude, and I'm not trying to shame the species or be mean, because I do think there are a lot of really beautiful animals out there I've seen, but I've seen how many of them have been made, and I just had no idea there was that many buyers out there. And it's just, like I said, and again, I don't mean to be a piece of shit because the boa market's getting a little like this right now, but it's a very bartering market. I can almost guarantee when somebody hits me up on Morph Market, asks me to trade, at least 7 out of 10 times it's a retic guy, and that's fine. I get that. But I think that's one of those communities that, like, I don't know how much money's floating around, but there is a fuck ton of bartering, so everybody's improving their collections through bartering. I like I said, the retic market, we need a real good retic guy on sometime to really discuss like how it works. And I'm not talking the dwarf retic guys, the big guys. Like, I want to hear about how the big snakes are moving.
Well, I mean, they're almost two separate species at this point in some ways. Like, and then they sort of are if they were ever kept pure to begin with, but now all that's gone, so it's fine. But even like Reach Out Reptiles, like, which I don't know him. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just like, where does he put all of these dwarf cross things too? Like, and who's buying them? Because like a lot of people are like, it's my pet, and I'm like, it's still 12 feet. Like, what are you doing with it? Buy a boa. It's always like my advice. Like, if you want something bigger but not too big, and they're like, no. But they get in like the retic funnel. I'm like, I don't know. Like, what's the end game if the Injurious Species Act teeth come back for that market, the whole market?
I think the retic market, from the limited stuff I've been seeing online, they can't take much more negativity. Holy shit. The drama and the negativity. And maybe if that's like good, any publicity is good publicity. It's like, well, you guys are getting some fucking publicity for sure. So maybe that's entertaining people. They're like going online and like, you know, the retic people are all fighting with each other. And they're like, look at the way this guy's keeping his shit. He's got mushrooms growing in his stuff. And, you know, these retics are big. They don't know what to do with them. They're sloppy. This guy's got dwarfs. This other dude, you know.
Right, they fight over the size. They fight over everything, but everything's contentious.
The purity, that guys aren't real dwarfs and stuff. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. If you like them and you're beautiful, and you also like to argue, and you like they kind of looking pretty attractive.
Right.
You know.
Look at certain species draw certain people in. I mean, maybe certain personalities just prefer certain species a little more, and that's why certain communities have more drama. Maybe there's something about the kind of guy you are who likes a retic or wants 40 retics that just creates this drama-filled industry sometimes. And no, I meet some good retic people, and I love the species.
Oh, yeah.
Way too big for me. I would never want to sell them to anybody because my sales pitch would be it's going to be too big for you to keep it, and I'd never sell any motherfucking retics. So that's the tough thing with me with retics is, and you know, the dwarf thing, I don't want to be rude. I don't always trust it. Like, I understand the science behind it, but like, do you think everybody's always going to be honest on their labeling and you don't think someone's going to change their label because they know it's going to make them more money if it says 75% this, 25% that. So there are a lot of concerns that people are going to get these animals that are going to be labeled dwarfs, and then they're going to be 20, 30 feet long someday. And I think that's going to be the next thing that might come up in that community, because it just feels like it could happen. Not to be rude, I'm going to get a lot of shit on me on this one. I love you guys.
I mean, it's already kind of come up because they're already like yelling at each other, like, because some people will semi-guarantee the size of adult, like the final size of a baby based on the parents. And they're like, yeah, we're pretty sure this is 5 to 9 feet, wink, but it's maybe you don't really know with polygenics because size is both environmental and an array of genes. So like you could just get like a bigger one.
Yeah, and the retic guys will know more about it, but I believe like if you take the mainland morphs, you want to take a mainland male and breed that to like some of the, like, what is it, the Slayers, and I know there's one that starts with a J, I believe. To put them into them, I think you actually get a smaller retic if you do it that way. Or if you take like a mainland female maybe and take one of the dwarf males to it, you actually get bigger animals genetically. Like they're just going to be larger in size, whether you do it the other way. I don't know. There's a lot to this. Can
I say I don't agree with that?
Oh, well, here's the thing. Maybe not.
I don't know anything about retics, but I know boas. Like if you breed a big male boa to a big female boa, most of the babies will be pretty big, but some of them might be sort of small relative to their parental stock. And then vice versa. You can like mix it any way because both males and females have genes that contribute to mature size, just like humans and everything else.
Yeah, like if you put a Nicaraguan through a Colombian, you're going to get probably big snakes. Like,
and some in between ones.
Yeah,
but probably not pure size different. It's like a a bell curve of size, right?
Like, I guess someone needs to do the experiment and just have a whole litter and just feed them exactly the same every single day and weigh out the meals and just figure out if they all get the exact same size or close to each other. If there's some in there that just show more dwarfism than the other ones or inherit more dwarfism, is what you're saying?
Yeah, but who's going to do that? But I
got that kind of space.
Exactly.
That's a long experiment too, because then you got to raise them for a while.
No. Don't you remember that article where Kevin McCurley talked about putting 12 feet on a retic in 1 year?
No, I didn't read that.
I think it was an old reptile magazine, the one where they had that. I think it was the Ghost Golden Child or the Orange. I think it's either Orange Ghost Golden Child in the front. And I believe in that article he had mentioned that you could get, and it's not like he took a baby and put 12 feet on it, but if you feed them enough, they grow fast enough. I think it was pretty much a foot a month on average the thing was growing.
Okay, so you probably had like a large like baby or a small juvenile, and from that point it got up 12.
Somebody should also fact check me on that, because that's an old magazine from, I want to say, like the late 2000s. And again, that was 15 years ago. I probably read that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it said in that article.
That's a lot, a foot a month, man. You could probably almost watch the thing fucking grow. That's like a third of an inch a day.
I've seen a ball python breeder get a male up to breeding size in 45 days.
It up and the retic's just sitting there. It's like.
Well, maybe in a big enclosure, if it's exercising pretty good, maybe it just grows like that. I don't know. This is more ethical stuff right now.
All the time and digesting those meals and just watching it go. I did hear somebody though one time over here they were talking to somebody that fed a retic like a large juvenile, like a really big meal, and his friend came over and they were looking at it. It's like a few days later, and he's like, "Did that thing fucking grow?" He goes, "It looks like it grew, like within like a week period or something like that." I remember hearing him talk about because they were laughing about how fast these like. I know I've definitely heard like. This is way smaller, but still very impressive. Like a young retic being fed a lot, like putting like 5 feet on in a year. And, that's even impressive. But 12 feet, that's pretty crazy.
Well, I guarantee different species have different metabolisms based on what their conditions are in the wild and how much growth they need based on the food availability. So there could just be something about retics where maybe food's a little more readily available or not readily available. So they have a metabolism that they're taking it all and they're growing a little faster. I mean, everything's built differently.
They get you're getting these constant, really high elevated metabolism spikes. So then you're keeping them at like the warmest possible temperatures all through the day and night, or they're able to thermoregulate and stay at their, temperatures that their body's, inclined to want to, be instinctively at. But if you're feeding them like that consistently and they're getting, it's like they can grow fast, of course. But yeah, we'll have to look into that one.
All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and say bearish.
Bearish.
Yeah,
Well, they've
I
been
would say
bearish for 30 years. Like,
I think everyone will always be. There will be a part of the hobby that always wants a big snake, and lots of the part of the hobby that know they don't want a big snake. But there were many more retics and berms pre-Lazy Act at shows and just in general, because that was like the cool thing. And then I think people did also like figure out it's too much work and money for everybody to have big snakes. And we started to pick small, easy to care for, good to translate into the pet market snakes. And I'm like, good, like that's like a net win. But I worry about boas, and I have boas, so it's like, but they aren't technically injurious yet, so I don't know.
I don't know what's going to happen with the boas. We'll never see that. I think they'd be the last of the giants, I guess you could say, to hit the list. I think there's probably other species that we're going to have to worry about more than that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And like I said, what environmental harm are boas doing? Like, where are there boas in the wild in the United States that have just adapted? Other than that one city where in Florida, where
a state,
Deary,
a part of a city.
Okay.
Yeah, one little area. And it's like for a long time it was almost like a myth. And then I heard that like a lot of that property is private and it's fenced and you're not even allowed to go on it.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of that one's pretty, that's actually a good story because that one is like it's like a culmination of a lot of rumors that you can't really fail it.
Well, Glade sells Deering's estate boas.
So did he collect two out of the wild and he's breeding back together, or is he claiming that he's
from Florida?
Right, and breeds them. And here's the thing: these things are sought after, but it's a label that I don't think anybody can guarantee. And I'd have to go back to what Vin told me about that. But like, was it something about like a movie set? Like there was some kind of movie filming, and like the animals got released afterwards, maybe. And I believe like one might have been like a Suriname cross and something like that. Like they're not like pure Colombians or anything like that.
Yeah, they're definitely part constrictor because they have huge tails, like the ones you see on iNaturalist. That are because like there's a public dock, so you can like park and walk, and you're not on private land, and look over into the estate, and so you'll see them sort of farting around the dock. So that's where most of people's like will herp them.
Is there people on iNaturalist then pinning some like okay? How many? Do you know how many roughly? Is there just a few, or is there like a couple dozen?
So the problem is like there's lots of like released pets in Florida that you can tell are not whatever, but to me there's only like 3 or 4 pins that are like a constrictor cross at the right location.
They look like they're legit, like, hey, that thing's probably like was born right there.
Right.
Sure, Deerfield locality. I like how they're making it like a locale. What a way to market it. It was like, pure Surname's logic. I have deer.
Yeah, I mean at Arlington, not this last one, but the one before that, Glades had one of them for sale. Who knows if it was real or not? But it almost doesn't matter.
Around? I didn't know.
Yeah,
still around. Okay.
They're still stealing my corn snake sales from every show I go to.
Really?
They're just bringing wild caught corn snakes, and I'm like, if they were cool.
They're in Oklahoma now.
Yeah, they do the Herps show network a lot.
Okay.
Isn't that wild?
It is a bit wild.
It'd be cool, but like they're like the flipper wholesaler. So if you brought anything, if you bring corn snakes or king snakes or milk snakes, they already have it for cheaper, and so they will suck all the sales out of the show because they can bring 10 of every kind of thing.
What a bunch of shit! What about hognose?
Yeah.
Junior's asking about hognose, so he knows whether or not to give him a call and wholesale some hognose this week.
I'm not wholesaling him any hognose. Anyone even like? I'd be like, I have like some. Oddball morphs of this. And like, we're paying like 50. I don't talk to those guys. I don't talk to those guys.
So here's the thing too with like, when you look at companies doing certain things, you're like, man, like, here's the thing. Anybody will tell you buys to resell, you're going to lose an animal now and again. You put money into this, your profit margin in some of these cases are not that good. So as soon as you lose one animal, you might have to sell 10 to make up for what you lost on 1 or 2 animals. So like, I get the stress on that, but a lot of those businesses, I don't know if there's longevity, and I also don't think they're making the kind of money we think they're making, if that makes sense. Like they're putting in maybe more work than they need to only make a little bit.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel good, man, to be like
it sucks.
To be like outgunned we basically have the same animal, but mine doesn't have crypto, and I can show you the parents and whatever. But you will always be outgunned by like a flipper wholesaler because
Yeah,
they can bring more variety than you could, even if you had dozens of parents, right? Because they can pick up from a whole industry of selection.
But and you have to give the buyer, like, I don't know, like, here's the thing. I always say, like, you can buy that animal, and some of these animals are fine. I mean, hell, some of these animals could have come from Junior for all you know. But
Right,
some of these animals are just fine. But like, when you get a good deal, sometimes it's a good deal for a reason. And when that doesn't work out, you have to go back and do it all over again. And you might go to somebody else. Some of those companies, the real bad ones, I don't know. They must just have a million new buyers every year, because I don't think they get repeat buyers. So I think a lot of those companies just somehow recycle through people, and I think it's all just based on prices.
Right, or like proximity in the show. Like if they're really close to the front, naive buyers will buy from them because that's like the first hognose they see or whatever. And they're like, oh, I just want one. It's $50, whatever. But then, and then they might circle around, but also they may never even come back to the show because they had a bad experience with like a snake that's maybe never been fed, period. Because that's how soon it was flipped. It was like the out of the egg special.
Yeah.
And so then no good breeder can, like, we can't, you can compete, and it's always going to happen. But if I have to look at like go for your pet one more time, I'm just going to just kidding.
You're probably going to have to look at them again. What you should breed some lower end. This is one of my strategies. I'll have some lower end like that, and if I see one of those places that's buying and reselling, I know their margin's not that great because they have to resell them. So I'll take some hognose and I'll price it at the same price. And then also, yeah, I always take a bunch of hognose though too, so I have a better, really broad selection. But yeah, it definitely is tough. I've definitely lost sales to somebody where it's like they're just flipping the hognose, and I'm like, I know some of those hognose are sick, and they're buying them over my stuff. It's not a good feeling. Yeah, when you've worked like 20 plus years, you learn all this stuff, and they're buying it from somebody that doesn't even hardly know anything about hognose and is probably sick. And then I'm like, man, I was like, this sucks, because sometimes it happens like a few times, and then like you got to be wary of it because I'm like, all right, don't start getting angry, because if you get angry at a show, it's not going to be good.
Right, you got to keep on your game face. But I have to hand out care sheets to the people who buy corn snakes from Glades, right? Like I even have to do their aftercare because they don't care, and they've been doing it for 30 years or 50 years, fucking how long. It doesn't matter. This is me complaining about shows, which is a perennial topic.
It was related, and you could also like sneak in there on the price like sheet. Like you didn't buy a corn snake from me, I don't know who you got it from, but you got to be careful, especially tables that have a lot of different animals, and they could possibly have animals that they're reselling. They could be infected, etc. And you're also, so. But,
yeah, I think in every market there's going to be variability, because you can even say like the ball python market is probably the most cutthroat market in the industry. It's always been. You're talking about these guys buying and reselling for these Kluber projects. You're going to the show and seeing guys that are breeding their animals, and they're sometimes charging half that everybody else is because they choose to, and they're allowed to because that's their business. But you talk cutthroat markets, man. There's nothing more cutthroat than the ball python market.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I believe that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like begrudge how they do it, but like you need to fight back too as like the producer, whether you're pricing them out of the market because you have more of the margin, like Junior said, or I don't know, just like outclass them. There has to be a way to win at some point.
Supply and demand. You need to find something that they don't have that you can work with, whether you're doing the Orchid Project, which I still don't think is really readily available. Other corn snakes. The candy cane was always one of my favorites. I feel like I never see candy canes anymore.
At every show, brother.
Do you really? I love that. You don't see candy canes anymore. I'd have a big adult to my table. I'd be selling the shit out of those every show.
Maybe if they were adults, but then you'd have to put in 2 years to grow them up. There's a lot of weird, like, you need to invest some time into corn snakes and hognoses too to make them look more palatable sometimes.
Well, I guess what I mean by the adult on that is like, I work a lot of junior or JMG stock, which we talked about for corn snakes.
My dad, I do corns. My dad.
There you go. If I take a bunch of the Vanishing Snows, if I take anything as babies, the salmon snow stuff, people don't realize how fucking sexy they are going to be in 2 years. These babies don't sell very well, but when I bring the adults with to kind of show what they're going to do color progression wise, having the adults with not for sale literally sells these babies. So my candy cane comparison was that sometimes you have to show people the end product, like the calico rat snakes, man. Put a bunch of white snakes on your table. They don't understand how beautiful they're going to be someday. You would need an adult to kind of show them what they're going to get.
Yeah. I mean, I need to print out like pictures like Lee does or something. I'm not bringing adults and giving them fucking crypto at a shitty show in Oklahoma to sell $50 snakes.
I'm the same, man. I don't want to take the adults out of the house ever. Man, I agree with that.
All right. Can we give like a verdict on corn snakes? How low will they go before someone will love them as much as me?
Well, how about this, Junior? What was the cheapest you ever saw corn snakes on a wholesale list back in the day? We talked about this.
Oh man, it was a thing. It was one. It was gourmet rodent. They overproduced a bunch the one year. It was like $3-4 each. They were trying to get rid of them. And that was the people buying them to resell. I remember it was Ian. I was talking to him at a show, and he had like laryngitis, and he had like corn snakes on the table for like $15 because he had bought some, and one of his guys helping was negotiating with his guy, and they're $15, and one guy's like, "Well, you take $11 bucks." I'm like, "What the fuck?" And then Ian's like there, and he's like, the guy's asking, Ian's like, "Take the $11." And I was like, because I was talking with him, and then he's like, "Hold on, Jeff," and he's like, "What?" He goes, "Take the $11." And then he just looked at me and started laughing. But that was like pretty short, because the thing is, obviously, when you're selling them for like $4 each, that person is taking some punishment and should be, because they're being a dumbass and overproducing. And so anyway, the price didn't stay that low. It flushed people out for sure. Corn snakes, I mean, I don't really look at their prices that much, but I do know they're in the very affordable range for a lot of really pretty morphs. The one of the more noteworthy, I like the micro scale combinations. I know you don't, Jessica, but there was one thing that I know, Jessica, you appreciate a lot, and I thought it was very beautiful. And like you're talking about, when you're talking about, you have to do some selective line breeding to get these, is a Miami phase ultramel, and it was like a sub-adult and adult. Those were beautiful, and you could see that they had really good selectively line-bred Miami phase in this ultramel, and it looked like, I was like, those things are stunning. I was like, I almost want to buy some of those corn snakes because they're so good.
You should.
Yeah, so there's like, I mean, I think the thing is, it's like there's only so many people getting into snakes, and they have choices, and the strong choices now anymore are ball pythons and hognose snakes, and a lot of people aren't going to get kicked off hognose snakes because they're just so cute, quirky looking, and you got the big shovel nose. You just can't beat the shovel nose. You can't beat the pig nose.
I think with corn snakes, where they're at too, because again, a species you think there'd be new mutations popping up every once in a while, you just don't get with them. I think it's just you got to do the true classics. I love the classics. I could think of like 10, and I would just work with 10 if I had a choice. I don't know what we could do to refine them. I don't look at that species like you might be able to. I did that red albino for that charcoal, and you said I'm a fucking idiot. And I am. I'm probably stupid for doing that, man.
I don't think I said that verbatim. I think you
I think you didn't use the F word, but I think you used the I word. I'm pretty sure you called me dumb.
I mean, I call it dumb.
Yeah, that's fine.
What about the one corn snake thing that's going to really help a lot is that recessive hypermelanistic, nearly melanistic corn over in Europe. That's going to go. I
made a dumb YouTube video about it.
Yeah,
200 people watched.
Well, once they start becoming available, that's going to be a good one.
I think it's going to be good.
Sorry, I get excited. What's that unique like wide stripe thing going on over in Hong Kong? Have you seen those? Where it's like albinos with like the widest, like California Kings, they have the wide stripe California Kings. It looks a lot like that. And it's a corn snake.
They look like hybrids to me.
Well, aren't they all? Don't pretend like you don't have some hybrids. Junior, let her know her hybrids right now. Break it down for her. Tell her what project she has that are hybrids.
Cinder, Tessera, Ultramel, and maybe something else. I don't know. Tessera, my dad, because my dad bred corns for a while. I remember he bought a Tessera corn snake, and I thought I was a pretty good control group for the observation, because I seen it when he got it, and then I didn't see it until like the next time I seen it was like an adult, and he goes, "Yeah, man, look at this." And I seen it, I'm like, that's not even shaped like a fucking corn snake, dude. And then when it laid eggs, I was like, those aren't even fucking corn snake eggs. It was like a big 10-egg clutch. I was like, they look like king snake eggs. I never seen it. My daddy laughed. He goes, yeah, I've never seen a corn snake clutch like this ever. He's never got another one. And,
yeah, I think Newport is Tessera too.
Well, by now Tesseras are well over 90% corn. They're probably into because it's dominant. So these are like getting close to 99%. So now they basically are a corn snake.
Right.
I think any hybrid that if you get over like say the 97 percentile, it essentially becomes you could group it with a peer. That DNA is going to be completely almost diminished, and things do change over time. I forget how many generations it takes, but over time, so many generations, even though they descended from way back, they don't really have that much DNA in common. So they're essentially a corn snake now. The cinder corn, you get your cinder corn and it got bigger than your average corns, and it always seemed to want to climb, and it laid weird fucking eggs compared to corn snake eggs.
Maybe your cinders, mine are small as shit. They look like keys.
Well,
corns.
I never had cinders. Well, the cinders.
Well, the ultramel was supposed to be grays, so
they kind of got that big, heavy body look. Cinders, I was hearing mostly from other people because you gotta remember, I've never really kept corn snakes. That's my dad's thing. So, I know I'm aware of this stuff. Cinders, one thing I looked at Cinders when he first had them is their eye structure. It's like is this mutation doing it, and it's like
it's the mutation.
You think it's mutation doing that?
I've had siblings from the same line.
Okay, good.
The Cinders are skinnier heads,
they got
and
bigger
bulgy eyes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it could have been just rumors starting that too, just based off of the appearance and people being skeptical of hybridization to create new mutations, which has been done with corns.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I'm not. So the guy who found silverleaf in Castañas, silverleaf in Slowinski also found the Tessera in a pet store, 3 siblings. So he could have introduced Sunkist also and into Kisatachi corn snakes and found it again. So there's a lot of problems, right? But the ultramel situation was actually a miscommunication with Don and Sean Bradley at a show because he thought the frosted, so the gray rat corns were the ultramels, and they weren't, and they just weren't all along. So that's why you can't reproduce an ultramel by making that hybrid. It actually is a monogenic mutation that happened, and not white oak.
Is it oak with albino?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
So
we're
going to wrap it up in a second anyways. I'm sure we'll be back by then. So do you believe that the Scales Corn Snake Project is a hybrid, or do you think that's pure?
So, when Emery got bumped up to full species status, it by default becomes a hybrid because the original one was a half butter or half butter or root beer or whatever. But I don't think the way Illinois interprets it, where every corn snake thereafter is full Emery basically even matters, right?
So now, did that project start in France?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because I remember Will Banks was one of the first guys to bring him in. I think around the same time Barczyk did. I think they both thought they were getting him in on their own, and then they both had him at the same time. I don't know if you remember Tinley. Will Banks came out one time. He had a ton on display. I believe Barczyk made a deal where he got a ton of those in back in the day when they weren't really available yet. From what I could remember, just talking to those guys.
It's possible, and this is one where I think it could have been mixed up or whatever, because Europe doesn't seem to give 2 shits about nothing, and they hide more stuff than we do, in my opinion, because stuff will go over there, stuff happens, morphs pop out, it comes back. We're like, wow, how did you figure that out? Whoa. A lot of the pied sides that come back from Europe act like rat snakes or more rat snake crosses. I'm be honest, that's everything I've heard about it. I'm not saying they are, but bigger eggs, different heads.
This is, I know it's kind of hard to admit it sometimes, but the reality is in this hobby that, we'll label something a certain way if we know it's going to be a profit. And, I don't know everything about corn snakes. Am I convinced they're all pure? The fact if there's even one that's not pure, in my opinion, nobody's collection is pure. kind of like my argument in boa constrictors. You know, your Colombians aren't pure Colombians if you've bred hypo into them.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah,
like,
you just have to accept that there's like a hobby corn that is like a partial, maybe hybrid of many things. Just like hobby hognoses are probably, because gloidii and Kinnerlii used to be subspecies. And if most of them were collected in Texas all along, how much Kinnerlii was in them all along? And gloidii.
anyway, so do you enjoy like the Honduran corn snake, king snake crosses like we used to do in the 90s?
People still do it. I think they're beautiful, but it's too much for me. Like it's too confusing. And
do you think there's a place, because in a sense we're talking designer pets? I mean, is there a place in the market for a designer pet like that? There's nothing like them. When you cross those fuckers together, they make some wacky ass zigzaggy weird shit, man.
They sell well. I know there's one guy, he doesn't make a lot, but every time he does his corn durans, and then he does another he sells them for a lot, like $400 or $500 he sells out of them.
Yeah. Blood balls. A guy I know had them on his table once for $200 and nobody wanted them. They accidentally happened in his pet store, I'm pretty sure. And then I made a comment to him that maybe he needs to charge more. Next show, I think he put them out like $500, $600, $700, $800. He sold out completely almost instantly. So something about that cheap price on it, in a sense, almost like scared people off. And like those other hybrids, I don't know if that's why he has to charge that much, or he does, or because he can. But I don't know. People are weird when it comes to pricing on animals. Some people look over things because of that.
All right, last question, because it's been fun, gentlemen. But I'm sure you have lives, stuff to do. But we almost didn't talk about them that much, but can hognoses bump ball pythons ever for popularity? Debate.
Nothing will ever bump ball pythons. I don't even know why we keep on fucking talking about this.
People like talking about it.
It's like people wish it for whatever reason. Like people are like, oh, they have to have their day, it's over. There is no reason ball pythons will never be the foundation of this hobby when it comes to the most popular gene or the most popular species. It's never going to change. I don't think anything's ever going to get above them. Like every year, hognose will do one or two cool things. Ball pythons are doing 10 or 15 brand new or 30 brand new things that people didn't even think about doing. We'll keep on reinventing ball pythons. We'll keep on making them worth money. It's never going to change. Ball pythons are king. Respect it. I'm not even a ball python guy.
I mean, I have ball pythons either, but
the ball python, especially with the amount of breeders that are really, like Quebeca and like Bob Vu, that are very good at, basically, sponsoring these animals and showing, getting people involved in them. And yeah, there's all the morph combinations and crazy stuff going on. There's certain countries where, hognose is superseded, but worldwide, yeah, out of the United States, it's going to be very hard for hognose to bump ball pythons. Especially, really, the ball python too, the availability. Anybody who's coming into the market, the availability of ball pythons and the morph range and the prices, it's a lot easier to acquire a ball python. Mm-hmm. And then, hognose, there's a few states too where you can't own them. Ball pythons, you can own them every single state. And then those couple states that are limited, the ones they are trying to change it, and that might possibly happen. But yeah, ball pythons are going to be, I think, impossible to bump in the United States. But hognose are going to keep increasing in popularity. There are new morphs that are going to come out. And, there's definitely a strong attraction to the market. I kind of don't want to see hognose become like ball pythons, though, to like an extent,
Right. Could somebody hognose, or is somebody right now making hognoses at the scale that would be necessary for a Petco? And then would Petco even want to sell them because of the rear fang thing?
Well, you got to, everybody's just got to start listening to the shit I've been saying for years. Pop can tab technique. You just pull up on them. People are like, oh, I don't want to hurt the snake. I'm like, that's the strongest point of their body. They use it for digging through loamy, gravelly soil. Just pick up on it. Just apply the same pressure there, or just slowly overpower them and unhook them. It's very easy. And, I've told people this, and they're like, 10-year-old kids are doing it, no problem. Mm-hmm. And I tell some 30-year-old person, they're like, whoa, I might hurt it. It's like, you know what? You might have to get another snake then.
Right. I mean, Petco sells tarantulas, which you also are mildly venomous technically too, right? So it's not like that matters. But I was just That's people's thoughts of why they wouldn't.
Thing, though. The feeding response, that's such a common thing.
Mm-hmm.
You go on Facebook every month, I feel like, or even more frequently, there's somebody that got a hognose and they're like, check out my swollen hand. I went to the ER because my one friend, a nurse, I told that doesn't even own a snake. I told him I got bit by a mildly venomous snake and my hand's puffing up. What should I do? Of course, the person's going to tell you to go to the emergency room. And I'm not advising to take medical advice from me, but at the same time, here's just don't let them chew on you. If you don't let them chew on you, you get them off you fairly promptly, you're going to have extremely minimal to no effect.
All right, so ball pythons are still king. Dang. No, I like ball pythons. I think they're fun. It's fun to do a show where you're the only non-ball python breeder, honestly, because it makes my life easier. To be honest, you bring a bunch of boas to a ball python show, you're gonna have a good time.
Well, how about this? Let's make a prediction. We'll come back to this in 10 years. So you think that a species right now that can rival ball pythons might be hognose, or do you believe there's another species?
I don't know. I actually don't know about hognose because they're weird. The fact that they triple clutch, sometimes double clutch a lot, have lots of babies means they're so high fecundity they might have a morph velocity drop that is not healthy for the high-end market. Sorry, Junior. Well, we'll see. People like them enough that it's maybe overcoming their fecundity.
Yeah, the prices have stayed up pretty good though, even though the high production rate. The other thing is too, it depends certain breeders. Not many people are getting triple clutches. Even I don't get many triple clutches. But yeah, I get if you figure them out, it's pretty easy to get double clutches. The one thing that's is changing. A lot of people are starting to listen to certain things that people like me have been around for a really long time, and even you, Jessica, promoting getting cryptosis out of your collection, how to properly quarantine. Because some people, they're like, well, how do you get your hognose to produce so consistently, get so many eggs? I'm like, here's my biggest secret. I don't have cryptosis. I just fucking, I quarantine very strictly. If I get a new snake, people are like, how long do you quarantine for? I'm like, indefinitely. That's it. It's the only right answer. If you don't, there is a small percent chance that you can get it. Am I saying that's completely wrong and you're going to get cryptosis if you don't quarantine indefinitely? No. There's a good chance if you quarantine for just a year and you get tests and things are negative, yeah, you're most likely going to be okay. But if you keep doing that long enough, you will get it in your collection. I mean, it might take 100 different tries from different people. But, as more people are doing this and they're adopting it, because you start seeing more people wearing gloves now, and your breeders you'd watch a year ago weren't doing that, and they're now keeping their babies separate. And so they're going to start having better production rates. And, yeah, it's definitely going to make hognose as people start to master them and get more healthy clutches for them. It's definitely going to, drop the price more. And, then there's other people who are trying to mass produce hognose. And that's going to bring things down. There's been a large number of people saying they're quitting their jobs and they're just going full time into hognose breeding. And that's an interesting.
It's crazy.
It's definitely a little. It's definitely pretty confident. A lot of the you have to really understand the reptile market and morphs and how trends and cycles work in order to do that. You always have to basically have new projects all the time. So, right. But that's what I like to do myself. So I always got new projects and.
Well, you're doing great. I don't know if everyone will do great, but you're doing great.
If everybody, I've had people say I want to do I've had people say I want to do exactly what you do, and they come and I've had a few people that I want to have this many and do this. I was if everybody started breeding hognose, even 30 people were doing as many as I'm doing, and we're all this successful. I was hognose are going to be about $150 each.
Right. There has to be a certain amount of money in that species to support a certain number of full timers. Just period.
Exactly. The problem with full timers is the whole idea of it, in a sense, is to take, and you're not giving as much. But then there's also people I observe. The biggest weakness is there's a lot of people that they want to mostly take. They don't understand. I'll reinvest a lot, but that's the thing. I kind of look at money as if I have extra, I'd rather put it into hognose than anything else. I don't want to buy a car. I did buy a go-kart, but that was pretty cheap. So you if somebody's hey, you want a nicer house to live in or a new hognose project? I'm going new hognose project. I'll live on a mattress next to a furnace if I have to. So a lot of people are like, well, I have a family and kids. I was like, you don't want to compete against me. I'll live in anything in order to do this.
Yeah, a lot of people are looking just like cash flow hognose on the side, but they're really not even passionate about them. They like their ball pythons.
I hate that. That's like some people are like, oh man, I want to get into hognose, man. Every show people asking me for them, and they're like, I read ball pythons and sales slow down. They think it's about time to get into hognose. I was like, I think it's about time you don't get into hognose, please.
Fire. Yeah, because like they're just going to run them into the ground. There's going to be no selective breeding. Morphology is going to go to shit. They will cut the prices right away.
Yeah, they're not going to be really like involved in them though, because they're not really like in it for the exact right reasons. Also, so
right, they won't buy in new ones just to diversify their bloodlines. They're just going to breed the same 4 and then drive it into the ground.
Probably,
which is what happens to corn snakes. That's what I think's wrong with corn snakes. Is everybody has a couple pairs. They don't know what to fucking do with them. They just slop them on their table for $30, and they're like, bye. And so we just have a bunch of production that nobody cares about, and it's only for pets.
That's tough. That's why you need like that new hypermelanistic gene. I think that's going to do a lot for that market and helping it.
Please. All right, Dave, do you want to promote your your project, or are you not ready?
We could do it.
Let's go.
Well, yeah. So because it's such an original idea, we're going to do our own podcast. I got Junior, William Philippek, and my friend Ryan Moore. We're all going to host together, and we're going to do stuff with a lot of people in the community. We're going no sponsors, so we're not married to anybody, so we can work with everybody. So I know I want to do a lot with Jessica. I know we got a lot of stuff coming with some other podcasters, but honestly, just want to do a lot of really good conversations like this. I'm not going to over promote it. I like podcast space. I fucking love the conversations. I think it's going to be a good time. Junior, when you get him fucking talking, he never stops. And keep an eye out. Around the first of the year, we're going to get things rolling. We got something hopefully with Phil Goss over the first couple episodes. We're going to be working with Ryan McFay with that one, where he's going to co-host with us when we talk to Phil, so we can have more exposure on the episode. Ran out of fucking air as I was trying to get that last word out. But no.
What about, how does this make you feel?
Well, that's a members only thing right there. We're gonna have a members only after group where if you're a member, you get that t-shirt. And by the way, Adeline and Chris did this for me, not the snake. I did that myself. You can tell the line work. Yeah, it was my stylist. It wasn't the best line work.
It's beautiful though. I
love it. I would make it my main logo, but I just, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to. But no, we're gonna goof off. We're gonna have fun. It's gonna be great. We're gonna be back doing stuff with you, but no, keep an eye out. We got a few bangers for guests early on, and we're just going to try to get a rhythm going in that space. But, yeah, we'll see what it does after a couple months. We'll see what it does after a year. But I know there's a lot of people in that space, and that's why I said I want to work with everybody. Like, I want to come on, and we pick somebody together, and we interview them together, and, we promote both our podcasts together. I want to do a lot of that with a lot of people. So you're going to see a lot of us working with other people. We got a lot of great stuff for donations for USARC. We're going to do a running total to see how much we can donate every year. I think it's going to be a good little space. And like I said, everyone's going to be welcome. And, if we have somebody on you don't like, just don't watch it. I don't want to be rude, but we're going to bring people on you might not like. It is what it is.
Well, you can still watch it because you like the one person. Just because there's one person you don't like. Yeah.
Well, we just don't want to hear about you not liking it afterwards. How about that? Keep that shit to yourselves.
I want to hear about it. See, I can be the co-host that you said that if you don't like it, I want to hear about it.
You're a host, buddy. You're not a co-host. You're a host.
Oh, I'm a host. Okay.
Yeah, we're hosting. Yeah.
Okay.
Together, buddy.
It's like on my stories, I kept posting, like, Dave's got a big announcement. Then Jessica's at the end, like, you want to promote yourself? Dave's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
He didn't sound very motivated, but I was like,
well, it's tough because, the same reason why I don't want to do sponsors. I don't want to have to do that spiel beforehand. You know what I mean? It's all respect to it, and by the way, I love that. I wish it was just the dick in the hand, but I just can't get what I want. But no, like I said,
from behind the head.
Yeah, I think there's so many good people in this space already. And like I said, I just want to be a bigger part of it. you know, I was fortunate to have my opportunity to work with Brian and Benjamin years ago on Herp House, and I had a blast. You know, the work I did with MJ, you know, we had a lot of really great people on. I thought we had some good conversations. I want to keep that going, and I want to keep it going with everybody. So, you know, I'm told you're going to see me on like 3 or 4 different podcasts in the next month. Anybody out there doing work, if you want to work with us, just give us a call and talk about what you want to talk about. You know, we'll get guests together. We'll just treat it as a team is the way I look at this. So I don't want to get sentimental, but I'm very excited about the guys I have working around me. I think it's going to be fun. I don't even know how to promote it. Just, you know, just like everything else, come out and see what we do. Hopefully we make you laugh, and hopefully there's some good information put out there.
All for One Reptile Podcast. No
All for One
IG,
Reptile
no
Podcast.
YouTube. No
Well, we
Facebook?
do have our YouTube page set up officially. I think yesterday we made a Facebook page. Yesterday we made
Okay.
so, but they're going to be. There's no content yet, so don't even try to the first of the year. We got a good first episode. It's going to get everyone excited, and we'll go from there. But you can go find us, but there's no content whatsoever. Zero content.
All right. Well, I think the more the merrier, because I think there's a lot of species that actually need more attention, just period, end of story, because otherwise no one will like them, right?
Yeah, we're not going to talk ball pythons that much.
Right.
we're still gonna bring them up when we need to, but no, we got we're gonna be working with Blake Wilson when he's in different countries. We're gonna be finding people in different countries to interview that he's out when he's doing his safaris. I talked to Desiree. We're gonna be doing hopefully Gatorland with her, talk about the Leucistic project in the next couple weeks. You know, I got a lot of different people, like I said, with Ryan McVeigh and VivTech, you know, talking to Phil Goss, hopefully once every 4 months. You know, I think the toughest thing for USARC, and that we all should help out a lot with, is, you know, when they put these long posts on Facebook, a lot of people don't want to read them. And I know Phil doesn't want to do a million podcasts, so it's not like he doesn't want to go and do everything, but like, you know, I think getting him out and doing this kind of stuff and talking to people is actually going to educate a lot more, because I don't think anybody has any idea what's going on in Georgia right now with the Burmese pythons. Like, I think that completely like passed by, it happened, and nobody even knew what was going on. So, you know, I definitely want to bring a lot to the hobby where we're just going to educate people as we go. I don't know, man. I've got a lot going on in my head. I got a lot of ideas for shit, and I just want to spill it out in this podcast. So we're going to have fun, and we're going to get weird. I promise you that. It's going to be weird. It's going to be really weird.
Perfect. Yeah. Good.
Excited.
More dicks, though. I think that'll help.
Well, you know, you got to figure out, you know, how much is too much dick. And I feel like that's the biggest thing in life. I think there's a tipping point of too much dick in any circumstance.
Okay.
So we're gonna find that line, and then we're gonna straddle the fence on that dick for years. I promise.
Okay.
How about that?
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
So,
David
Words.
Jr., thank you for coming to my shitty podcast.
Yeah.
had a great time. Can't wait till the next one.
All right.
Yeah, nice talking to you, and Dave, of course. And I'm very excited to help to contribute to Dave's podcast. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Our podcast.
Our podcast.
All right, chat. Thanks for coming. Thanks for those super chats. See y'all later. I'm sorry we didn't get to King Steaks. I think someone was crying about it. Purple Church. Sorry, Purple Church. Next time, maybe.
I actually hit up Mark Bailey for Honduran milk steak information before this, because I thought we were going to talk about Hondurans, and we never even got to Hondurans.
Sorry. Next time. There's like you know, thousands of species of steak.
So, do lamb propulsions next time.
Yeah. All right. Next time.
I say Kings aren't overproduced. They're good. They're
in a good spot.
They're
price wise. All right, everybody. Bye. Let's all wave like princesses.